Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Hall. Welcome to the Hayward City Council meeting. Today is June 6th, 2023, and I would like to start off with Councilmember Ray Bonilla Jr. to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you guys can stand. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Present.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Present.
Councilmember Roach.
Present.
Councilmember Syrup.
Present.
Councilmember Cermeño.
See.
Mayor Salinas.
Present. And of course,
Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, I apologize. I did not hammer the official gavel of the meeting, so I'll do that now. Meeting's now in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. City Attorney, if you can please give the closed session announcement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Council convened at 5:30 with all members present, no public speakers. There were 3 items on the closed session agenda. First, the Council discussed one case in the category unanticipated litigation, took no reportable action. Secondly, the Council discussed labor negotiations with bargaining groups and took no reportable action. And the Council then discussed the evaluations of the City Manager, City Clerk, and City Attorney. And I will defer to the Mayor as to what, if any, action was taken.
There was no reportable action. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. What I'd like to do this evening is start off with a proclamation. Last week, on Thursday afternoon, the City of Hayward raised the Pride flag, kicking off another year of Pride Month. And today we are delivering a proclamation declaring this month, June, as Pride Month in the City of Hayward. After I read the proclamation, Council will go down to the front here, and I'd love to invite Mr. Lopez and Ms. Collins to the front up here, and then we will sign the proclamation, and then we'll give it to you so that you can take it with you. So, okay, so let me read this. City of Hayward Proclamation. Whereas the City of Hayward has a diverse lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, queer, intersex, two-spirit, LGBTQIA+, and gender nonconforming community, and is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, and equity for all people in the community. And whereas Hayward has been a welcoming community for LGBTQIA+ residents, businesses, and organizations for decades. Whereas Hayward has been home to the Gay Prom Hayward for more than 25 years and was one of the first to hold such an event in the United States. And whereas the Rainbow Progressive Pride flag is an important symbol in recognizing and celebrating our diverse Hayward, and whereas on June 1st, 2023, Hayward acknowledged its commitment to be inclusive, equitable, and compassionate community by resolving to fly the Rainbow Progressive Pride flag throughout every June in honor of Gay Pride Month in City Hall. Now, therefore, I, Mark Salinas, Mayor of the City of Hayward, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of June as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give this a big round of applause. And then if Mr. Lopez and Ms. Collins can meet us there at the table, and if all of us can go down there at the table, and we'll sign. Mayor's Conference, the United States Mayor's Conference. And it was nice to see that LGBTQ plus issues were front and center throughout the entire conference. Mayors across the country and their cities and their councils are raising flags. It was nice to go in downtown, where downtown was decorated with pride flags. Businesses were adorned by pride flags and banners, and it just really was a nice thing to see in Columbus, Ohio. So anyways, like mayors and councils across the country, we'll be signing this today, and we'll be giving it to you. No, there's this one here, I think. Oh. Yeah, there's just one here. That.
It's a fresh proclamation.
The ink dry.
Okay, yeah. Backwards, flip it around. Do like that. So that. Ben, go scan it, fix that. There we go. Wait, before you do that, I gotta make sure it's, okay. Right.
All of these supervisors.
How many council members are taking?
All of them. Yay.
Here you go, congratulations.
Thank you.
What a great month it is.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so it's all,
How you want to do that?
yeah, let's do the front. Well, go ahead and, if you wanted to make some comments, feel free to.
Happy Pride. Good evening. My name is Robert Lopez. I work for Project Eden and the Lambda Youth Project, program of Horizon Services here in Hayward. And I think we've all been in some way touched and involved with gay prom, all of you, in some manner or form, either having attended as a young person when you were a student, or standing with Barbara Holloway when we were here in these chambers back in '96 and dealing with the anger and hate that was present, and the reason why we had the first gay prom. And so the question is, well, every year, why do you have a gay prom? Because our young people have to have a place that they can call their own, that is safe, and that they feel that they are community, that is multi-generational with volunteers, and that young people have a voice. I tell them, you are at the wheel. You are the one driving the ship, not us. My time is done. I've done what I needed to do. You've been trained. Do it. Lead us, not us lead you. And so I thank you for this recognition. Our youth are very happy and proud that they are continuing to be recognized in very troubling times at this time. Thank you.
There you go. Good evening, council members. I just want to really quickly say thank you to Councilmember Roche, thank you to Councilman Andrews, and thank you to Councilman Syrup for coming to the gay prom. I have been at, hate to precede myself, but I have been at 20 of the 26 gay proms, and every year I'm touched by seeing the young people, seeing the adult supporters come out and support this event in the manner that they did. The youth were so happy. They are incredibly grateful. And we just want to thank you, not only on behalf of Horizon Services, Project Eden, and the Lambda Youth Project, but on behalf of our young people who we serve every year through our Lambda Youth Project, which is funded through the city of Hayward. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations. Okay, I'd like to now move to city manager comments.
Public comments first, Mayor. No, public comments first.
I'd like to first go to public comments before I get to city manager comments. Thank you. Of course, the screen moved up on me too fast. Public comments is reserved for anybody in the audience that would like to make a public comment on something that is not on the agenda, or online who would like to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda. And I will see who is. We have one. Let's see. We have one person online that would like to make a comment, Suzanne, and then I'll return to the chamber. So, Suzanne, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Suzanne with Hayward Concerned Citizens, and I was just curious as to wondering if you guys are doing anything about the 4th of July, the fireworks situation. And last year you guys posted signs and I think provided inserts somewhere in the mail about the fines that are going to be given to people if they're caught doing fireworks and stuff. So I haven't seen anything around, and I was just wondering if you guys are on top of that and planning on doing that again this year. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure the city manager will bring that up in her report. Do we have any public comment in the audience? We see one, so go ahead. And remember to state your name, your address, and
Peggy Guernsey on Delmar Avenue in Hayward, California. And two comments just to aware you. I've heard of all kinds of people in the Tennyson area that are going to have fireworks like they always have every year. But my other comment is I would like the public to be very aware in the school district. As much as I am so proud that we have the gay pride and we were, like first in the nation in that, I am still sad that our public high schools do not allow and encourage the kids to come to school in their own school communities, that they can't comfortably and wonderfully celebrate school pride at their own school proms. I mean, it's been years. Some schools still say 2 boys can't come together, 2 girls can't come. It's school rules or whatever. So as much as I'm glad we have a separate one, it's still a kind of a rite of passage. And if you can't even do it on your school campuses comfortably and safely, it's something we still have to work on. So, thank you.
thank you for that. Next public comment is our very own Hayward's resident college president, Dr. Carlson.
If you don't mind, I'd like to defer to Robert Stevens and follow him.
Sure, absolutely. Commissioner Stevens.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Robert Stevens, and I'm a resident of 26530 Parkside Drive. So I'm here tonight to talk about some Comcast power backup cabinets that have been installed along my properties. They're about this wide, about this tall. And while they are really ugly and obnoxious, I'm not here tonight to complain about poor me. What I'm here to talk about is that I really feel that the process that the city is using to grant encroachment permits could use a little help. So, I've done these type of projects both on the service provider side and the public agency side throughout the state of California. And I know when one of these cabinets comes up in a public neighborhood, in somebody's neighborhood, it's full stop. Do not move forward. Let's figure out an outreach plan. So I stopped and I talked to Dublin, San Rafael, and Richmond. And all of them informed me that they have a plan in place to work with Comcast in the neighborhoods to actually install these boxes. I'm on the record of saying, I'm fine with 1 box in front of my property. I'm fine with 2 boxes in front of one of my properties. I just want the opportunity to talk about the least impactful place to where it's going to go. And I want my neighbors to be able to have that choice as well. It's really important that I think the strategic roadmap, there's 2 segments of it, enhance community safety and quality of life, and strengthen organization and health that specifically address this very issue. Comcast did not install the boxes per plan. They provided this door hanger on my property. Per the permit, they're supposed to provide this to every property within 300 feet. None of the people I found have received this. So just to kind of ask the question is who's watching the shop? Who's watching the show out there? Tonight on my run through the neighborhood, PG&E's trenching through one of the brand new streets that was paved. I asked the PG&E rep if the city inspector saw it. They haven't looked at it. Inspector drove right past. So, and the final issue that I think really kind of drives me nuts is that, and I've said on the Planning Commission, is the built environment matters. And when we haphazardly place things, our built environment doesn't look like other cities in the Bay Area. And this is precisely known as the theory of environmental psychology. And when we don't care about how we use our right-of-way, I find it's unequal, and it doesn't create a place where people want to live and be. So I thank the city for working and getting a meeting scheduled between the neighborhood and Comcast this week. I really appreciate that. I'm going to ask at that meeting for the permit to be revoked under Section 72.16 of the Municipal Code, and I encourage council to review policies regarding formal encroachment policy practices consistent with other municipalities in the Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. And then Dr. Carlson.
It's really a following up with Mr. Roberts' comments, Stephen's comments, sorry. I'm with the OHA, which is the Old Highlands Homeowners Association, and we had a contentious history with the city. Many lawsuits about such things as streets, sewers, water. We could find something to sue on. You know, there was a time when that was a constant thing to have this sort of contentious relationship. In the recent history, though, we have found ways to work together. We've conferred on, worked with each other on rebuilding the streets. We've reached compromises on a number of issues, and we look forward to more of that. But you can't compromise when the only communication is a door flap to one resident. So if there's going to be something happening in the OHA area, in the OHA Hills, whether it's mandated or not mandated, because we're not arguing that you shouldn't do mandated things. All we want is an opportunity to converse about maybe where things should happen or how things should happen. Just a dialogue. And notice is not dialogue. Notice is a one-way communication. It says, I'm in charge here, and oh, by the way, we're going to come in and do this next week. So we'd like to make sure, and I'm just here to make sure we don't backslide too far from the relationship we have, which is pretty good right now. And the way to maintain that is keep the conversation open. So as you do things in the OHA, contact OHA itself. You have our addresses. We'll meet with the residents. We'll smooth the way. We'll make sure everybody comes out of this feeling good. And I think that's much better than what you just heard. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're absolutely right, Dr. Carlson. I think we have come a long way over the years between the dais and OHA, and you're absolutely right about the communication by way of notice. So I absolutely agree. So thank you very much, and we'll make sure staff is noted on that. Our next speaker is Perla Corona. Okay, yeah, and that item is coming up, and you can certainly get perfect. Okay, wonderful. All righty. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'd like to close public comments.
Mayor, my apologies, sorry. We have another online attendee.
Oh, here we are. Oh, okay, yeah. I believe SHNA is the South Hayward Neighborhood Association, if I'm not mistaken, the acronym. So go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. We are the South Hayward Now, South Hayward Ahora. We're a group formed to advocate for issues in the South Hayward area and other areas of the city. And something that we wanted to bring today to the attention of the citizens that are there sitting at the meeting, in addition to the council members, is the concern that we had brought up in the past regarding St. Regis. For you citizens that don't know, there has been discussions with the city of Hayward to convert St. Regis into half the complex would be a facility for folks who have mental disabilities, and the other half would be for homeless housing. Now, South Hayward Ahora is not against this project at all whatsoever. However, we are concerned that this project has not had any community input in terms of the scope of the project. We were told by planning that the SEQA review occurred in 1971 with the original project. We believe there are adverse impacts with traffic and other impacts. So we asked the council members to please look into that. It would be very important that the citizens have input into this project that's going to affect the downtown Hayward area. And for folks who don't know, the St. Regis is right there at the Five Corners. That big, it's right now a convalescent home, but will be converted into somewhat like a hospital / homeless facility. Our concern also comes from the fact that all the issues that have been coming out of the Navigation Center ran by BACS. We feel that BACS has not been honest and upfront with the city of Hayward, that there have been there's blatant drug use occurring there today. Up to today, there have been folks who've died because of overdoses. The police are out there all the time. Ambulances are out there all the time. We feel BACS has not been honest on their side with the city about all the major issues that's occurring there. And we feel that with this project, there should be conditions set to protect those folks who will get service there at the St. Regis. That's a busy intersection, and it's a very busy downtown. And it'd be unfortunate if the folks who are staying there are in harm's way or not watched properly by BACS, especially if there's live-in folks who have mental disabilities. So we ask that the City Council Planning Department look and have public hearings and require conditions for the project to protect those folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I am seeing no one else online and seeing no one else in the chamber. I'd like to close public comments, and I'll move on to city manager's comments.
Just one comment, and I'll, since it came up during public comments on the fireworks issue, folks will start to see the notices come out this month. I did notice one of the no fireworks sign is already up on D Street, so I know maintenance staff is out there getting the signage up, and the public information will be out shortly. We are planning to do the same fines and the same system that we used last summer, and hopefully this summer we'll see even more reduction than we did last summer based on the implementation of those fines last year. So that's the current fireworks plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to close that item, move on to the consent calendar, and I would entertain a motion, but before before we vote on this, I did have a comment on item number 18. So I'll entertain a motion. Or no, wait a minute. Yeah, right? Yes. Oh, public comment first?
Well, after there's a motion.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So number 9. Number 18. Okay, yeah, Councilmember Goldstein, number 9.
Thank you. So on number 9, the report that came with the storm drainage pumping station for the Stratford community indicated that there was a May 31 hearing. Can you tell me anything about what happened at the May 31 hearing?
In terms of the community meeting?
Yeah, the community meeting for the Stratford community on the storm drainage pumping station.
Let me see if our maintenance services director is online. Oh, there he is. Todd, could you respond to that question? Thank you.
I can, yeah. The May 31st community meeting was for all residents from all lighting and landscape districts. And I can report that we did not have anyone from Maintenance District 1 attend the May 31st meeting.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councilmember Roach.
I'll move the items.
Actually, before, I just caught myself. So before you do that, let me make a quick comment on item number 18, or I'm sorry, item number 18. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Adopt a resolution approving the updates to the city's strategic roadmap. Just wanted to make two positive comments. One, I wanted to thank staff for, really ushering us through this process and really working with us to land on some very specific, very clear, concise priorities and strategic priorities. What a lot of folks may or may not know, that these priorities and strategic initiatives, they are things that up here on the dais that we hold on to very dearly. They represent a very collaborative spirit of work that we all participated in, and to see all of this sort of finally come to a point where we can all sort of rally around and move the city forward. I think that's absolutely incredible, and so I wanted to thank staff for that. Also, I just wanted to personally thank my colleagues for really considering and including in this strategic roadmap an education city lens. The ability to sort of think about our academic institutions as we look ahead and plan and build, whether it's building housing or building commercial or building retail or building businesses. This lens will sort of move us in a position where we look at the positive impacts that everything we do up here has on students, on kids and families, and really looks at the work we do aligned really with all of the agencies and all of our academic institutions that are responsible for ushering kids and families through a cradle to career pathway. And so I really wanted to just acknowledge and thank my colleagues for bringing this to fruition. And with that said, I'd like to close comments, open up for public comment. If anybody has any public comment on consent items, seeing none, I'd like to close public comments, and I believe Councilmember Roach was going to move this item.
Thank you. I'll move the consent items 1 through 18.
Moved by Councilmember Roach, seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. Madam City Clerk, if you can read the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes, thank you, and it unanimously passes. Thank you. Okay, next item is a work session. And this is our opportunity to have staff report to us what they have been collecting both data and findings on a particular issue. The community, the city will be able to contribute to the conversation. Council will be able to contribute to the conversation. No action will be taken tonight. This is purely we're listening, and staff then will go back and continue to refine the ordinance, and then we'll come back at a later date to vote on the final policy. So item number 19 is sidewalk vending ordinance. Review and discuss draft program policies for an amendment to the Hayward Municipal Code to comply with Senate Bill SB 946, the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act. And I believe either the city manager will kick this off, but I certainly know that our planning director, Sarah Bowser, will kick this off also.
I think our city clerk wants to explain translation services first.
And first, we have a message from our city clerk, but most importantly, I think we have a message from our translator.
That is correct. Thank you very much. So this evening, we are providing an interpretation service in Spanish. And at this point, I'm going to ask one of our interpreters to please make an announcement.
Okay. Este anuncio se va a hacer primero en español. Speaking as interpreter, just wanting to make sure I'm being heard.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Para los que están ahorita en la Cámara del Consejo, por favor, la actuaria les va a guiar a otro salón donde van a poder escuchar todo por español a través de Zoom por una computadora. Si la pueden seguir, creo que ella ha de estar dándole una señal para que se vayan. And then now the interpreter will give the instructions for those who are attending via Zoom. First, I will do Spanish, and then I'll end with English. Para los que van a estar participando ahora en esta sesión de trabajo y quieren participar en Zoom en español, quiero que si están utilizando una computadora portátil o computadora de escritorio, favor de localizar el icono con figura de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla cuando este aparezca en 1 minuto y luego pulsen en interpretación del lenguaje, se dice Language Interpretation, y seleccionen el idioma del español. Si están conectándose desde su teléfono, iPad o dispositivo similar, busquen el menú con los 3 puntitos en la esquina superior del lado derecho de su pantalla y pulsen Interpretación del lenguaje, Language Interpretation, y luego el español. Esto permite que escuchen la traducción al español con un 80% de volumen y el audio en inglés se escuchará al fondo con un 20% de volumen. Tienen la opción de apagar el audio en inglés pulsando Mute Original Audio, ubicado en el mismo menú donde eligieron el idioma español. Gracias. Ahora se va a pasar las mismas instrucciones a los que necesitan poder escuchar traducciones al inglés. For any person who speaks English only and wants to be able to understand what will be said through Zoom in Spanish onto the English channel, you will have to select the English channel. Those instructions is in a few moments on your computer, whether it's a laptop or desktop. On the part of the bottom of your screen, a globe will appear. You'll need to click on the globe and then choose language interpretation. And if you're wanting to be able to understand the Spanish, you'll need to choose English. If you are connecting from a cell phone, an iPad, or other sort of intelligent device, you will look for the 3 dots in the top right of your screen and click there. And then also that globe will appear in a few minutes or moments, and you will select then English. And that way, anything that's interpreted from Spanish to English, you will be able to hear and understand. This concludes the instructions for both the English and the Spanish channels on Zoom, and that's the end of the instructions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Madam City Clerk, are we all clear now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I'm going to start the interpretation service. If you need to listen to the presentation in English, you will need to select English. And if you want to listen to it in Spanish, you will need to select the Spanish channel. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Bowser.
Actually, our planning manager, Jeremy Lachurko, is going to kick off this item tonight.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mayor Salinas and members of the Hayward City Council, Jeremy Lachurko, Planning Manager. I just wanted to formally introduce Rosalind Thompson, who's one of our senior planners, and Dulce Choa, one of our assistant planners. Both of them started as part of the Hayward family last year, but this is their first formal presentation to the full council. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Rosalind for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, Mayor Salinas and council members. My name is Rosalind Thompson, and I am one of the planners on staff in the planning division. With me is Dulce Ochoa, and she's another one of the planners on staff in the planning division. And I just want to let everyone know this is her first presentation ever at a public meeting, so give her a warm welcome.
We're all a friendly audience here, so welcome to the dais.
In this presentation, we will be providing a project background, give an overview of Senate Bill SB 946, summarize the outreach efforts to date, outline the key locational and operational policy guidelines, and conclude with questions for the City Council. As for the project background, in 2019, the City Council adopted its strategic roadmap priorities, and one of the priorities identified was to develop a sidewalk vendor ordinance that aligns with SB 946. Grow the Economy was adopted as one of the 6 strategic priorities in fiscal year 2021 to 2023 strategic roadmap. Invest in programs that support Hayward business and workers was included as one of the 5 projects identified under the Grow the Economy priority. The Sidewalk Vendor Ordinance was included as one of these programs. Staff from the Planning Division is managing the update effort, while several city departments are assisting. I will now turn over the presentation to Dulce Ochoa to present the next 2 slides.
Thank you, Roslyn. Good evening. As Roslyn mentioned, I will be providing a brief overview over Senate Bill 946, also known as the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act, signed into law on September 17, 2018 by Governor Jerry Brown. SB 946 became effective on January 1, 2019 and decriminalized sidewalk vending statewide and imposed limits on local jurisdictions' authority to regulate sidewalk vending. The intent of SB 946 is to promote entrepreneurship and economic development opportunities to low-income and immigrant communities, increase access to culturally significant foods and merchandise, and contribute to a safe and dynamic public space. It preempts any contrary local regulations and requires any local regulation of sidewalk vending to be consistent with SB 946. Now I will walk us through our outreach efforts. Back in December 2022, city staff held an informal listening session with several business owners. And from February 2023 to May 2023, city staff held internal and external stakeholder meetings with street vendors, business owners, city departments and divisions, and various agencies, including but not limited to Alameda County Department of Environmental Health, Hayward Unified School District, and the Farmers Market. In February 2023, the project webpage and dedicated email address were launched. A total of 83 community comments were received. Additionally, an article was published in the East Bay Times highlighting the city's community outreach efforts. From March 2023 to May 2023, city staff reviewed sidewalk vending ordinances of 18 jurisdictions. Also during this time, an online survey was made available to provide the public with an additional opportunity to give their opinion. A total of 1,565 survey responses were received. In April 2023, the canvassing of sidewalk vendors took place. All 4 sidewalk vendors interviewed indicated being unaware of the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act and permit process for sidewalk vending. Additionally, all sidewalk vendors expressed willingness to obtain permits and participate in available workshops to help navigate the permitting process. All sidewalk vendors requested the information be made available in other languages, time to achieve compliance, and identified the permit cost as a potential barrier. Also in April 2023, city staff held a meeting with the Council Economic Development Committee. CEDC feedback included but was not limited to express support for limiting hours of operation for sidewalk vendors and requiring liability insurance. As for enforcement, the CEDC supported an approach focused on education and awareness prior to additional steps being taken. This brings us to tonight's City Council work session, where staff is seeking feedback and direction regarding the recommended locational and operational requirements, which will be used towards preparing the draft ordinance for introduction in late summer 2023. And with that, I'll pass it back to Roslyn.
Thank you, Dulce. Onto the draft policy language. In attachment 2, both locational and operational guidelines are listed. Locational guidelines are those that relate to the where of sidewalk vending activities, and operational guidelines relate to the how and when, or time and manner. There are 2 categories of locational and operational guidelines: those that are recommended based on the best practices within the sidewalk vending ordinances of 18 jurisdictions, and those that are optional guidelines that, although are not common among those 18 jurisdictions, may be applicable to Hayward. Some of the locational guidelines based on best practices are the following: minimum ADA clearance, 100-foot distance requirement from public and private schools, distance requirement from parks, distance requirement from building entrances and exits. Some of the optional locational guidelines that the council could consider are the following: no vending or setbacks from community-wide focal points such as plazas, no vending within landscaped areas, limit sidewalk vendors in residential zones to roaming only, and no vending within designated parking zones. For operational guidelines, some of the best practices include hours of operation, maintaining an area clear of trash and debris, stationary vendors in residential areas, prohibited items for sale. Some of the optional operational guidelines include no selling of services or engaging in or offering to engage in any type of rental activity, including the rental of any goods or services, displaying only goods that are available for immediate on-site sale, and prohibiting display of any signs advertising any off-site business. At this work session, staff is seeking guidance and direction on the following questions. Do you agree with the recommended best practices for locational and operational guidelines? Which of the optional locational and operational guidelines should be included in the ordinance? And are there any additional optional or locational and operational guidelines that should be considered? Following this work session, staff will prepare a draft ordinance to be introduced to City Council later this summer. That concludes staff's presentation on this item, and we are available to answer any questions that the council may have.
Ms. Thompson, you not only did a phenomenal job, you and Ms. Ochoa, but you also did it within 5 slides. Thank you very much. Before I go to council questions, I'd like to open up for public comment. And I believe leading us off on public comment will be Ms. Peggy Guernsey.
Thank you, Council. I'm here tonight to support the brick and mortar businesses in Hayward. I do not agree that the state legislator and governor should be able to force counties and cities to support sidewalk vendors, especially if it appears that unsafe conditions could adversely affect citizens of the city. Because I do not know how to stop them, I'm seeking your assistance. We do not know where the food is made or if it is clean and safe. If I get sick, who do I call? When the China A restaurant on Mission was open, the employees cleaned the mops in the same sink that the noodles were washed. This was turned into the health department and they got 19 violations, but it was not found out to be by an inspector. It was a person eating in the restaurant that complained seeing it. I don't want the police to be regulating this. They have other things to do than for me to call them if I throw up from a street vendor. If a family cooks or a church youth group has a cotton candy machine and they're going to be selling at a school sidewalk without permits, who checks them to clean the machines? Our shopkeepers want to build and live in Hayward. They are part of our community and they need to be supported. They support their families and we need to support them. The fruit vendor may be dropped off at a corner, and who does their permits? Where do they wash their hands? Where do they go to the bathroom? Who regulates if they wear gloves, have insurance, or anything else? A shop that has sinks, employees, insurance, pays rent, taxes, and they have machines that regulate how much they sell and what's going on. They have licenses, permits. How does a street vendor pay sales tax, and who keeps a record of all that? I'm here to support the shop owners, and if in the long run, it will benefit everyone, and it'll build our city because we've got a community, and if these people are going to take the time to rent and support a building and build a business, send their kids to school, and live within our community, we need to support them. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Mr. Luis Barba.
Hola, buenas noches. Gracias por la oportunidad.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mi nombre es Luis Barba y junto con
My
mi
name is Luis
esposa
Barba,
y
and
mis socios somos dueños del restaurante
we
La
are
Casita.
restaurant owners.
Está localizado por la calle A en el 320.
It's located on Street A by 320.
Queremos expresarles la situación que estamos viviendo, lo difícil que ha sido este tiempo para nosotros.
We want to express how difficult it's been for us during these times.
La Casita fue fundada por mi socio hace más de 20 años.
This business was started by my business partner 20 years ago.
Somos un restaurante pequeño donde todos nos vemos como familia, todos los empleados y nosotros mismos.
We're a family in the restaurant, and we see each other as family members.
Y a comienzos de la pandemia, pues todos sabemos lo difícil que fue, que nos cerraron. Y pues gracias a Dios pasamos esa y se fue la pandemia. Pero luego viene el problema de la comida ambulante.
And as you know, during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, it's been very difficult. We were shut down for a bit, but thank God we made it through. And then we started worrying about the food.
Y no es que nos moleste la competencia, pero es una competencia que no es justa.
It's not that we're bothered with the competition, but it's not a just competition.
¿Por qué? Porque ellos no pagan renta, ellos no pagan luz, ellos no pagan impuestos, ellos no pagan workers' comp, ellos no pagan nada de todas esas cosas.
Why? Because they don't pay rent, they don't pay employees, they don't pay workers' comp, they don't pay any light bills, they don't pay for anything.
No pagan permisos, no pagan nada de lo que nosotros pagamos.
They don't pay for permits, they don't pay for anything that we pay for.
Si yo tengo que vender un taco en $3, pues ellos lo pueden dar en $2. Simple.
If I need to sell a taco for $3, they can sell it for $2. Simple.
Y pues es muy complicado, la verdad, es triste pensar que probablemente no vamos a sobrevivir otro año.
And it's sad when I think about it, but it's a sad reality that we might not make it another year.
O cuando tenemos que cortarles horas a todos los muchachos y dicen, tengo que pagar mis cosas y no alcanzo, pero ¿qué hacemos?
Or there are times where I have to reduce, my employees' hours, or sometimes when I have too much overhead. But what can I do?
Solo quería expresarles eso. El problema de la comida ambulante, todos lo conocen. Yo sé que hay comida que es regulada, pero yo me hago la pregunta, ¿cuánta es regulada? Porque a 1000 pies yo tengo a veces 5 lugares. A 1000 pies de distancia solo de con nosotros.
I know that the food has to be regulated. I know that, there are food vendors that are out there, but honestly, who's regulating them? Who's checking their permits? I mean, within a distance of 1,000 feet, I have at least 5 food vendors.
Otros lugares venden hasta alcohol y no les importa.
There's even other places that sell alcohol and they don't care.
Yo he trabajado prácticamente toda mi vida en la cocina. Y esas personas, honestamente, no están siguiendo nada de protocolos de salubridad. Muchas personas se pueden enfermar por eso.
There are a lot of people that I've worked with in the kitchen that do that, and they're not following safety protocols, and a lot of people can get sick. I mean, that's not good.
Gracias por la oportunidad. Solo quería expresarles por lo que estamos viviendo.
Thank you for the opportunity. We just wanted to express what we're going through.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Perla Corona.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I didn't really have anything prepared. My goal was to just come and ask questions and just to see what type of information we can get off of this. Hearing, his concerns, I completely understand where he's coming from as a business owner because it is very difficult. But I'm coming from a different point of view because I actually want to be able to start my own business. And in order for me to be able to do that, I have to start from somewhere. So this is why I came here tonight to try to figure out how I can be able to do that. In the meantime, obtaining my permits, having everything under, control, taxes, doing everything the right way, the same way that they're doing it in their restaurants and their businesses. I want to be able to have that opportunity to be able to do that because I think we're all here with the same purpose of being able to provide for our families and being able to survive. Through the pandemic that happened, a lot of businesses shut down, a lot of people were struggling. So I'm here to just kind of get more information in regards to what can we do to be able to obtain these permits. Like I said, I'm barely starting to want to start my own business, so I haven't been out there selling anything. So money-wise, financially, that would be an issue for me to know how much these permits would cost, what it requires to actually file for the state taxes, how much that's going to be. I want to do things the right way, and I want to be able to show that we can all be here together. We can share everything because there's room for everybody. So that would be my question, my concern, and I would want to say, if you guys did pass this, there's a lot of vendors like myself that are willing to go through the process of getting permits, being checked, and having the food handlers, so that everything can be legit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let me see if there's any public comment online. So we have a couple of public comments online, and the first caller is Diego Cervantes.
Hi, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say a couple of comments. I think I am in support of for vendors. I have a local pollero man. He be supplying us with chicken every week, and it's hella good. I think having vendors and I understand there needs to be regulation, but not to go overboard. It provides them with business as well, and they have families to feed as well, and I'd like to support them. I also think that having them is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, because Hayward should be a fair market, as well as it can negatively impact certain workers. What if, they're undocumented or something and they get into trouble? I just think that doing this, there is a fine line, and it could be good or it could be bad, just depending. But yeah, I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Our next caller is the South Hayward.
South Hayward now,
Aurora.
South Hayward, Aurora.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak. So we're really happy about this workshop and the upcoming proposed draft ordinance. We did attend a couple meetings with the city to discuss the ordinance, and we're really happy that this ordinance will allow or make it easier for folks to obtain permits, mobile food facility permits to sell, to vend. And we feel that that will bring our health and safety concerns will with the health department's regulations, it will assure that food is prepared appropriately with appropriate utensils and tools and what have you, and that it will bring opportunity for folks who want to start their own mobile food facility to sell on the streets. And in the meantime, protect our brick and mortar stores. This will make these, folks who obtain these permits will now be paying taxes and be paying all the fees and permits to operate just like restaurants. And so that will add, that will give added protection for folks who buy food from the mobile food facility from the street food vendors. We are and have pushed for enforcement. Other cities who have adopted ordinances are using their law enforcement to enforce. And the only way this ordinance is going to work is if there is enforcement. And we want to make sure there's equitable enforcement, not just enforcement in the hills or in certain areas, but rather enforcement in those disenfranchised areas of the city. So we want to make sure that the city recognizes that enforcement is key to all of this, that it shouldn't be done just in those neighborhoods of, those wealthier neighborhoods, but rather in all areas of the city. For this ordinance to work, there has to be the mechanisms that are provided in SB 946, which goes beyond the fines. It refers to other government code sections that allow for additional enforcement outside of disallowing folks to vend in the city. That's what this ordinance does, is it says you cannot stop folks from vending in the city. However, folks need to get permits and be licensed. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. I don't see any more public comment online, and I don't see any more public comment in the chamber. So we have, okay, if you have a public comments, come on up. And then when you're finished, make sure you check in with our city clerk.
Rigor mortis sets in once in a while. Here I be, Robert McKay addressing you. And this evening I was able to get the attachment number 2, and that's the only attachment so far that I've been able to read. Not that I've been denied, but it's quite lengthy, and I've looked at it very quickly, so it may have been that I didn't see what I would like to address. The opposed vendor locational guidelines, however, are most impressive. A lot of things that they're suggesting, like 15 feet away for vendors and so forth and so on. I'm not going to list all of them because that isn't what I want to address. It may well be that I've missed what I feel is one of the most important things, that are you folks addressing the safe welfare and health of potential buyers of food? Say if I go to one of these vendors and I buy some of their food and I ingest that food and I get ptomaine poisoning, what have you done in the past to prevent that from happening? Now, I find it sort of interesting because it says that if there is such a first incident, there's going to be a verbal warning. I hope there's going to be more than a verbal warning if I get ptomaine, but that's not so bad because it says on the second incident, you're going to give that vendor a written notice. Oh, whoopee-doo, no, somebody's going to get ptomaine the second time. And then for the third, finally, there's going to be maybe a fine of $250, maybe $100. I'm not trying to be facetious, but I think that the food incident and getting ptomaine should be paramount and not distances and so forth. So I recognize these vendors are like jackrabbits. They hippity hop around, and it'd be very difficult to keep track as to how safe it is as to the food they're selling and so forth. And all of you folks have a very difficult time trying to figure out how you're going to be able to monitor them. Now, I know that in Hayward, for instance, there was one restaurant that had something like, about 17 violations. They closed the whole restaurant down on Mission Boulevard that I know, and you're familiar with that one. Now, that's a stationary location, and people can find them a little more readily than these vendors. But I don't know what the answer is. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes, that you're going to have to try to figure that one out. But I hope that for the welfare of the people in Hayward, that you do address the welfare and how are we going to monitor these vendors and be able to control them so they're not giving out food that could cause damage or ptomaine. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then Did you, make sure you, okay, for as long as you got there. Okay, and then we had a gentleman in the back in the red baseball cap.
Excuse me, will you talk to me?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. You may sit down. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then state your name and address and.
Bruce Richmond, 315 Inwood Lane. A couple things come to mind. It's all about quality of life in Hayward. So many things are just not going the way I'd like them to go. We're doing things at St. Regis for drug addicts, homeless, what have you. You know, there's things in line already to take care of them. We don't need to spend all our money on some whole new building. How many rooms is this St. Regis? Quite a few. That's an expensive property. It's prime location. But we're investing in stuff like that, not neighborhoods. This street vending thing, like I said, the brick and mortar. I forget the gentleman's name here that was here. He's paying all the insurances. He's paying employees. He's paying the person that owns the rent, that owns the building. He's doing it the proper, clean way. They've got a barbecue pit now on Whipple Road. It's got so much smoke when they first start out, and there's cars pulling over to the side, clogging traffic. That's not good. I see in the thing you have for residential. They're residential. Is that in your neighborhood? Yours? Yours? I'd like to see them there, because I don't want them at my place. They had a guy selling papaya and some other things. Nice guy, everything. But the people would come out of school, get their stuff, throw it on my yard. Throw it in the gutter, sit around talking, double park. I don't like it in my neighborhood. One more thing to make Hayward look like crap to the rest of the good cities around here. Do something so if it's in your neighborhood, you'll be fine with it. Because I don't want it in mine, really. Most of those tax things, all those, let's face it, that we're talking about taco trucks, we're talking about vendors for selling Warriors t-shirts, things like that, period. They don't have cash registers. They don't have anything that tells them their total intake of the day. That gentleman's getting taxed on all his things. What are they getting taxed on? Jack. Not a damn thing. How can you say this is fair? Not fair. Not equitable. Don't like it.
Thank you. Let's see. I think. We have two more speakers. We have. Oh, okay. No.
Good afternoon, everybody. We came last year, this November, December. We told about our problem, and lately we haven't seen anything. We have seen a lot of things. Many other business pop up on the streets. And you guys talking about Safe Sidewalk and Vending Act. Well, I would say vending, it's a transaction. But I mean, not to bring your kitchen outside and cook outside. That's a totally different thing. And talking about sidewalks and all that stuff, it's getting worse and worse. We would like to know if you guys are really going to implement and do something quick, because as I count on 8th Street last time was like 5 businesses. Now we have 16 businesses all over 8th Street and Hathaway, and they're increasing because nobody tells them anything. And there's not much I can say. They already said, Miss Peggy and the guy in the red hat, they already say a lot of things that I would like to say. I just would like to know, when can we see some change? When are you guys gonna implement something strong? The taxpayers thing, the tax payments too, I mean, it's already been said, but we'd like to see some changes in Hayward, because we're struggling. Our sales they're dropping down because of those guys, and it seems like nobody cares. If there's anything we can help you guys, call, report anything. We see some guys cutting fruit in their garages. If you guys want us to help you guys, we can do that too, in order to do something about this illegal vending. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Solorio. And then, Mr. Garcia, can you check in with our city clerk and make sure she has your name?
Council. I think a few of you know me personally. I'm Antonio Solorio, owner of Tacos Uruapan. How can I start? So, I've been a Hayward resident for over 30 years. Started Tacos Uruapan back in the early 80s, street vending in Hayward, but under all Hayward codes, ordinance, street vending, when it was allowed at a certain size on commercial areas. I've seen a lot of changes for that permit to change to where it got moved from commercial areas. It were pushed to the industrial areas, which is fine. You don't want a small business affecting a brick and mortar. We were fortunate to buy a corner in industrial Hayward, put that location there, keep it going, and build a brick and mortar. The whole street vending took Hayward by surprise, I think. The pandemic didn't help the ordinance. Everybody came in, started doing their thing. The 496 did not help either. I just hope that you guys have a game plan to assess the situation, because it is affecting a lot of businesses. I know it's changed a lot. So I wish you guys luck on changing. I know you guys are hands are tied behind you on a lot of situations, because this 496 is protecting a lot of these vendors at a certain level. Like we talked about, Kelly, they're protected and can't fine them, you can't arrest them, you can't do a lot of stuff with them. So I know you guys have a big game in front of you. So put your A game on and good luck. I just hope you guys could do your best to, if not, it's going to keep growing, and we're going to be the next East LA. All right? Good luck, guys.
Thank you. And we have another speaker. And then, Mr. Solorio, did you check in with the city clerk and then state your name and address?
Yes. This is Jorge Flores. I'm the owner of Don Polvoron Bakery. Some of you guys know me already. Well, mine is pretty simple. The way the things are going, it's like a balance. Used to be like a lot of business and no vendors. Now the way it's becoming is less businesses, more vendors. If we don't stop this, we're going to just the street vendors, people who don't pay taxes, and take a lot of the stuff from the city. So they don't contribute, but they use our streets. And what I mean is somebody has to clean up the streets. We, the business, are paying for that, and not just the businesses, but everybody in the city. So if you guys want to be fair, let's freeze our taxes. We don't have to, if they don't pay taxes, why are we paying taxes? Let's play fair. Let's, freeze our taxes, freeze all our duties, and absolutely, we can do this. I don't like that, because I love this city, and I want this city to progress. And I don't think this is the way that we take in, this is not the way to progress. Do we want all street vendors, or we want established business? Yes, it's really hard. I understand what you're saying. It's really hard to start a business. But that's how we started. You start small, go to school. There is a non-profit organizations that will help you and understand how to start a business. That's where I will start. And then, there is a lot of help that the government will give you, like loans and stuff where you can start your business. That's how we all start our business. It was hard. Yes, it was. But here we are. Now we're all, it was so hard, but we here. Now they trying to take it away, in just a moment. I mean, I understand they had to pay taxes. I mean, they had to support their family, but do it the right way. That's all we're asking is, what do you want? People that pay taxes and follow the rules, or you want these people, that they're not going to contribute to the city? It's that simple, Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have someone online, Andrea Salazar.
Hello. I just want to say thank you for everyone. This is a difficult topic, and I understand and I can see both sides. I think for myself, street vendors for me are really part of, my memory here living in Hayward and important to me. And I think that SB 946 provides some reasonable guidelines specifically to protect, vulnerable, historically oppressed and marginalized communities. And I think a lot of Hayward's mission and status as sanctuary city and related communities are a priority. And so I think that should be considered. And I think being equity oriented is very important for moving forward with this. And yeah, I think that's most of my points.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And then our next caller is Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Suzanne with Hayward Concerned Citizens. I'm on Stryker Street in Hayward, California. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I missed a small portion of it, but are the street vendors paying tax? Can anyone answer that?
We cannot reply to you, so just so go ahead and make your statement.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So I'm wondering if they are taxed and if their businesses are verified, all the current vendors that are out there. And as the speaker before the last speaker said, you got to level the playing field if you're going to do this. Level the playing field. Let them not pay taxes, because you guys got to make it fair. He also came and started a business and struggled. And this is how it works. This is how America works. It's the melting pot, and they come to America because they know they have the opportunity. My grandparents came to America. I'm not originally from here. And they struggled. They learned the language. They did everything. And we just need to level the playing field. If you guys are going to do this, please consider the businesses that pay taxes, workman's comp, garage liability. They pay their employees. They pay the disability insurance. They pay everything. This is not fair to them. And you are going to, as he said, lose real brick and mortar businesses. And this is going to become East LA. Please take their comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so seeing no more public comments online and seeing no more public comments here, we got one more. Go ahead. And then after you're done, make sure you visit with the city clerk and give you your name.
Okay, so hi, my name is Christian Estrada. I live in Blossom Way, and I noticed that in Hathaway, there's so many street vendors, and from what I'm seeing, is each month it keeps increasing. And there's this one specific place. It's a chicken place. They roast chicken, things like that, and it literally melted the paint off of this building, and it's like super close. Like here's the stand, and right here's the building. And I really do think that there should be a distance from a vendor and a building, just as in one of those slides it mentioned that that it was optional for there to be a distance from an exit and from the entrance, and I really think that this should really be taken into account. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so seeing no one online and seeing nobody in the chamber for real this time. So I'd like to close public comments and then come up here to the dais. And first up, I have Council Member George Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all the public commenters that shared their thoughts tonight. I want to first say that I appreciate the outreach and research that staff put into bringing this proposal before us. I know there was a lot of conversations that had to be had with stakeholders, and it's clear from the proposed ordinance measures that a lot of thought went into it. I also know that a number of community members have been very vocal about clarifying how we work together with sidewalk vendors while promoting better public health and being fair to our longstanding brick and mortar businesses. So I just want to thank you all for your advocacy as well. It was moving to hear stories about how some of you all started off as sidewalk vendors, and I appreciate the empathy that everyone's bringing to the table here. I'm going to try to keep it pretty straightforward and just go through a lot of the proposals and share my thoughts on those. I want to start off with just some initial concerns before I dive into them. I want to make sure that the ordinance isn't too restrictive or trying to solve problems that aren't actually happening. I trust that a lot of conversations have been had. We've received a lot of feedback. And so I imagine the proposals that are on the table are responding to issues that we're actually hearing. What might be a best practice in another city might not necessarily be a best practice in Hayward. I think we try to be mindful of what works for Hayward specifically. Also, I want to make sure that we're providing technical assistance to folks if we're going to start enforcing new regulations on them. I think it behooves us to help walk people through this process, especially if folks aren't native English speakers. I think if people are trying to start up a legitimate business and they're not in compliance, they should be in compliance, but we should be able to help them through that compliance process. And obviously, people have a different relationship with the state or the government or police, and so just being mindful that our ordinances take that cultural sensitivity into account. I want to make sure that we're not stifling organic activation. I know people have different thoughts on sidewalk vendors, but they do enliven neighborhoods, and obviously there's a range of opinions on them. So just going through the proposals now, I'm going to start with the locational proposals. So 7B, within 15 feet of any driveway or alleyway. I'm curious to know, and this kind of ties into private residential property as well. What if it's their own property or their own driveway or their own alleyway?
Councilmember Syrup, so I think I need a little bit more clarification. So their own driveway, meaning on private property, because this ordinance would be regulating the public right-of-way.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, so when we say that they can't be within 15 feet of any driveway or alleyway, let's say that they're not blocking a public right-of-way, but they're within 15 feet of a driveway or they own that driveway. I'm just trying to understand how restrictive we're being here. Are they not allowed to be there?
So that is a good question. This, when we wrote this, we were considering commercial locations such as in downtown, such as in industrial areas too, where site visibility is a concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something we can take into consideration if you would like us to only apply this to commercial industrial properties in downtown and not residential.
Yeah, I just want us to be specific, and I know there was a comment out there, what would it be like if you had a vendor in your neighborhood? The neighbor at the end of my block, it does vend in our neighborhood, and I'm really happy to see them at the beginning and the end of every day. And so I understand people have different feelings about that. I just wouldn't want to restrict them from enlivening our neighborhood personally. So there's a range of opinions on that, and I don't want to be overly restrictive. 9A and B, the street corner and intersection, can you just explain some of the reasoning behind banning street corners or intersections?
Yes, Councilmember Saib. So that came from our Public Works Department, and that basically is another visibility at corners issue.
Understood. For 10A, it says prohibiting it at a police station, a fire station, or a hospital. I know that we already have a public property rule as number A2, and so I'm just trying to understand, the additional application of emergency buildings on top of public buildings, or if this is necessary at all.
Again, these are recommendations,
Yeah.
and if you feel like this is overly restrictive, we can definitely pare it back.
Sure. So I would prefer not to see that one. I think we already covered that with A2, so it feels a little redundant. I'm also asking because I don't want to make a recommendation before understanding the intent behind it. 14, vending on private property. Does that restrict them from vending on their own private property?
No. So actually what that does is that prohibits another person from vending on someone else's private property without their authorization.
Okay, understood. Maybe a little bit of clarification there would be helpful. Thank you. So for the optional proposals, excuse me. These are optional locational guidelines. I'm pretty opposed to one. I think public plazas are a place where we might want to encourage folks to congregate. I understand that the city can authorize folks to serve on public plazas. I understand this is just an optional recommendation, but I want to voice my dissent to it. 2, no vending within landscaped areas. That's pretty broad. I think if we're trying to get folks off of public right-of-ways, I think it's all right for them to be on landscaped areas as long as they're not damaging the landscape in any severe way. 6, limit sidewalk vendors in residential zones to roaming only. I'm also opposed to this. I think if they want to be stationary, they should be allowed to be stationary. Forcing them to constantly move, I think, is a pretty unjust requirement. And then 4, no vending within designated parking zones. I'm in support of that and making that not optional but required. I think if there's a parking space for folks with disabilities or it's short-term or passenger or commercial loading, we definitely don't want to impact people's ability to do business or park in a spot designated for them. Okay, moving on to operational. This list is a lot shorter, I promise. So number 2, sidewalk vending activities being limited to 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. This misses, different mealtime rushes like breakfast and dinner. I feel like this might be a little bit too restrictive, so I'd recommend expanding the hours a little bit. 5 feels unrealistic. Sidewalk vendors shall provide a trash receptacle. I think they should make sure there's no litter in the neighborhoods, but then I just imagine that they're going to take the trash they collect and then put it into a public receptacle. So I just don't know if this is actually like a reasonable or a realistic regulation. So I want us to address the issue of litter, but I want to make sure that it's actually feasible or going to happen. And then number 8, I'm pretty strongly against. Sidewalk vendors can't erect freestanding appurtenances adjacent to the vendor's person, cart, wagon. I think if they need a seat to sit, if they need an umbrella to be under the sun, or they need an ice chest, that's pretty reasonable. So restricting that feels a little bit overly stringent. Option 1, sidewalk vendors shall not sell or offer to sell services or engage or offer to engage in any type of rental activity. I'm in support of this. I wonder how much of it is actually a problem within Hayward with our current vendors, but I think people should be vending the services that they're vending on the spot, not offering to rent out additional goods. So those are all my comments on the proposals. And then just to close out my thoughts, I agree with the public's comment on sanitation. I think sanitation and taxation guidelines are missing here. I also think traffic safety guidelines are also missing here. If there are traffic concerns being created on the road as a result of their vending, that definitely is a problem. I forget which specific proposal this is. I think it might be near the beginning, but having vendors have to be 50 feet away from each other might be restrictive if it's actually better for them to congregate away from brick and mortar businesses, but closer to each other. So that feels a little overly restrictive to me too. And then one last thing that I think is missing here is distance from brick and mortar restaurants. I think a concern I've heard from some business owners is that these vendors are set up too close to brick and mortar restaurants. And I'm wondering if there's a distance requirement we can make if something is zoned as a food service facility.
Councilmember Saib, I just would like to say that any regulation would have to be based on objective health, safety, and welfare standards, and we can't use any other concerns such as economic competition concerns.
I see.
Yeah, to come up with the regulations.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. And then last comment, I appreciate the alternative enforcement approach. I like that we're not going straight into being punitive. I like that there's an educational component to it. And like I mentioned earlier, if there's any type of technical support or advice that our economic development department can provide as part of that, I'd like to see that as part of the enforcement, because folks should be permitted. We should know who's serving in our community, and we should trust that there are public health regulations being followed, so we're not endangering our community either. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being precise. It's 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Okay. Council Member Zermeño.
Thank you. Rosalind and Dulce, thank you very much for the report. Did I just hear that we cannot tell street vendors to not set up shop close to a restaurant, brick and mortar place?
We can tell them not to, it's just the reason why. So if there's an exiting, an egress issue, it can be based upon that, but it can't be based upon an economic competition rationale.
Right. That really is a sucker punch to all of our folks here who came out to speak exactly about that. Even when I had a video store, I mean, there was a guy selling DVDs in front of my store. So how can we find language or find a loophole in 946 to state that a street vendor selling tacos within 100 feet of Tacos Uruapan is a hindrance or is an obstacle or is something that would make him or her move away? Because that's what we're really talking about here. We're talking about livelihood of brick and mortar folks, and we cannot tell a street vendor that they cannot sell close to that shop. Can we look into that? Maybe legally there's some language or some change? Is there a health angle that we can say that a person selling tacos outside of La Casita is not doing it healthily, and therefore he or she needs to be moved away? Is that something that we can look into?
So a couple of issues. So we can have, and most cities do that have an ordinance related to sidewalk vending, have a permitting system that requires, one, if you're vending food, that you need to get a mobile food facility permit issued by the county. So they have to first be compliant if they're vending food with the county standards. So that's one thing. In terms of distancing, again, it has to be based upon an objective health, safety, and welfare standard. So for example, I mentioned egress. So making sure that people can exit and enter out of a building with enough access. So if it's 50 feet, 25 feet. But in terms of any kind of economic competition rationale, we can't do that because under SB 946, it states that any regulation is prohibited that's rooted in economic animus. That's the language of the statute.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm not pleased with that. I don't think many of our folks are too. Anyway, one of the proposals is to have folks be within 50 feet of each other. I think that's too close because I can see up and down Jackson or up and down Tennyson every 50 feet there's a street vendor. So I think we need to move that to maybe 200 feet or 300 feet because every 50 feet you could conceivably have a street vendor. So that needs to move. 100 feet is just too short. It's just too short a distance in my book. Let's see. Let's talk about SB 946. SB 946 speaks about allowing folks entrepreneur possibility, correct? Allowing them a possible way to become successful business owners. So I think that what we're missing in this is identifying a place where we could tell him and her and them, if you want to sell your tamales, if you want to sell your pozole, here's the place where you can go from 9 to 7. It is centrally located, and it's a way for you to begin to your process. That's how Antonio Solorio started, with a small cart that his dad was pushing around. Miss Perla Corona, it would be an excellent candidate for her to get her business started by going to this marketplace type situation that we're going to set up on A Street that's very successful in Castro Valley and is very successful in Mexico, where they get all the small little street vendors, when they put them in one building, and that's how they get going. That's how they get started. So I think we're missing that. So if maybe you can look into it. We identified a place for taco trucks over on the ranch. Maybe there's another place that we can do, and then we can tell these folks, this is where you want to go, and these are the permits that you need. Let's see. There's a point missing about they need to do their business sustainably. I didn't see a green point. They need to make sure that it's not styrofoam. They need to follow the composting, etc. Let's see. Okay, 50 feet, no good. Let's see. So I really want to push that, trying to identify a place where they can get together and sell. They must be sustainable. Very, very important. Let's see. 50 feet from each other. No. Okay. As far as your questions, can you go put the questions up? You had 3 questions, please. All right. Because we cannot control the distance from a brick and mortar place, unfortunately, because of SB 946, I agree with all of these recommendations as far as I'm concerned, along with all of the other optional ones, because in my mind, it's going to help the businesses that are paying taxes, that are brick and mortar, and it may put a small hurt on a street vendor, but he or she may then consider, well, I need to start maybe my own business. I need to start a location. I do receive calls once in a while. How can I get started? Chamber of Commerce has the city has a how to get your business started in the city of Hayward. So let's put that out in Spanish and in English. And let's get some of these folks. Let's get that out there. What we also need is and what's missing in the ordinance is a definition of what a street vendor is. And does it include the tamal lady who sells tamales out of her trunk at Food Max at Tennyson and Hesperian? Does it include the who's the other guy that's really? There's another guy that I put in here that was just really tremendous. Anyway, so that's important. We want to make sure that they cannot cook on site. That needs to be plain as black and white. Let's see. Abide by all health department rules, and they must have that. No open grills. I hate to see as a matter of fact, the best churros in the Bay Area are in Hayward. But it's an accident waiting to happen because those churros are cooked right there in an open flame, or not an open flame, but the gas, and if that thing were to spill over, we have a lawsuit in our hands. So, but they're very good churros. I have not bought them because I go brick and mortar. All right. Let's see. No cooking. And let's make sure that they cook at home, and then they have any perishables, they need to be refrigerated or need to be something. So how will that be controlled? Do we have an idea? So police, code enforcement, the county health department?
The last answer is the correct one. It's the Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. That would be under the mobile food facility permit. So there are requirements that a vendor must follow in order to vend food, and that's an issuance of getting a mobile food facility permit.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I did think of the other guy who needs to be defined. Does the street vendor include the guy who pushes his ice cream cart throughout our streets?
That's correct.
All right, very good. Okay, so thank you for the report. To my colleagues, to our restaurant and business owners, help Rosalind and Dulce and us try to find a loophole on this SB 946 that will allow a Don Polvoron, a Don Gazpacho, taqueria, to have more distance between your business and this street vendor. There must be a hole, or maybe a loophole, and make sure that you speak with Assembly Member Luis Ortega, Ms. Wahab, and get this modified so that we can do a better job of protecting brick and mortar businesses. And then that would also mean that Ms. Perla Corona can then start her business and then join Metro Taquero, join the other places, El Taquito Dos, et cetera. It's very important. Is that something that maybe you can help them work this out? Okay. Sorry it took so long. Thank you very much. And let's do this. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Thompson and Ochoa, nicely done with the report. I've got a few questions. Doesn't appear anywhere in SB 946 or in our legislation that there's any prohibition restricting cooking or serving unpackaged and perishable foods, as long as the vendor has the mobile food facility license. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is the annual cost of the MFF?
It's in the range of $500 to $700. That depends upon some factors.
Okay. And otherwise, they're subject to all of the same restrictions that we've talked about and fines and so forth. So if they're not properly licensed or not properly adhering to the other various restrictions, they could be warned, fined $250, fined $500. And I think that's the maximum, correct? $500 fine?
Yeah, that's correct. If they were to violate if we have a ordinance and it has outlines an enforcement mechanism, then yes, the maximum is set by the statute and it's outlined in the staff report what the maximums are.
Would that also apply if they were in violation of the MFF or if they produce some kind of toxic hazard from their food handling?
So no, if they violate the MFF, that's a completely different enforcement mechanism that the Alameda County Department of Environmental Health has.
I see. Are you aware if in order to obtain an MFF, the vendor also has to have some kind of liability insurance?
So no, that would, if there is that requirement, it would have to come from us.
I see. Okay, all right. I didn't see anything in our proposed ordinance or in SB 946 that said that we can't have an insurance requirement, since that, in my mind, would constitute a health, safety, and welfare issue. So I'd like you to consider adding one. So, you know, health-related liability insurance to protect the public from foodborne illness. I read an article from Economic Roundtable. The study that they did suggests that businesses that are near street vendors actually do better economically. Are you aware of that study?
No, I am not.
Okay, all right. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I probably should have asked you that with some time for you to go review the article, but I apologize that I did not do that. However, in that article, even though it does strongly suggest that businesses near street vendors do better economically, they didn't actually talk about how those how the mixes of businesses and street vendors, what that mix is, how that actually affects the outcomes. It only said by these proximal numbers in these businesses, these areas did better, and it was actually based on hiring employees. So that was the measure that they used to figure that those businesses were actually doing better. And so we don't know at this point whether, I mean, anecdotally, we can all probably nod our head in agreement that competition, you know, especially when it's price-based competition, probably is not a good thing and probably not a fair thing. Unfortunately, just to point out, SB 946 says we can't have a role in those economic outcomes. We can't, as a city, we can't prohibit for competition reasons. We can only make prohibitions based on health, safety, and welfare. So, but I think that if I were someone looking to set up a vendor situation, that I would want to work out with the business community where I'm looking to locate to figure out what type of business would actually be welcome and complementary. Because I think under those circumstances, you would do better. And I do know that companies like, you know, Starbucks, they don't just go willy-nilly looking for an open shop on a street corner. They actually have certain other objectives, other businesses they want to co-locate next to because they know that there's mutual benefit there. So something to keep in mind. Now, the MFF permits are all regulated and enforced by the county, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And my understanding from sources that I have around the county, they're telling me that regulation and enforcement right now is really lax for a couple of different reasons. One of them is staff shortages at the county level, and the other is that they rely on local police for safety of those code enforcement officers. I'll call them that. I don't know if that's what their title is, but that because their safety could potentially be in jeopardy, that they rely on the local police. But the local police generally, I'm not saying about ours, but just generally, they're a little reluctant to get involved in that because it seems more of a commercial related thing than it does a other safety related issue. So have we discussed how we're going to address that as a city or within the enforcement?
Yes, we have. At our CEDC meeting on April 3rd, it was communicated that code enforcement would be undertaking the effort to enforce. And as we move forward in developing the ordinance, that would be detailed in the ordinance itself.
Okay, all right, good, very good. And do we have a mechanism for computing and collecting sales tax, or do we just simply leave it up to whatever the vendor decides to report by way of receipts for the day?
Sales tax would have to be reported by the vendor. However, we can require a business license, which is a tax that they pay yearly in order to vend and operate in the city.
Okay, and when we collect the fees for the business license, are we also then like pre-computing sales tax, or because I've never seen that done. So we'd be charging a fee for the business license, but we're not really charging in advance for what we feel their annual or quarterly sales tax revenue.
So
Right.
I'm definitely sure about the answer to the business license, but as far as the sales tax, I'm unsure of the answer to that, and I can look into that.
Okay.
The city doesn't bill for sales tax. That's a separate entity. So
Right,
that-
franchise tax board would do that,
Yeah,
correct?
so that wouldn't be something we would necessarily regulate.
Okay. Are you aware of any mechanism by which the franchise tax board would compute some value monthly, quarterly, annually on the proceeds from a street vendor?
We can look into that. I don't know that we have that information here.
Okay, all right. Just, again, talking about leveling the playing field, we just want to make sure that everybody's treated as much the same as possible. And then just a couple of additional comments. I'm also not in favor of prohibiting the appurtenances. I think we're doing the community a favor and the business a favor by allowing them to have, a place for their customers to sit and for themselves to rest. So unless it's a health, safety, and welfare issue, I would not be inclined to say that they could not have the appurtenances. And then the trash collection prohibitions, my biggest concern, I make it a habit to drive around different parts of the city just to kind of see what's going on, and I am constantly irked by the illegal dumping. And so the concern that I have is if we make trash collection prohibitions too stringent, that maybe these street vendors might actually be contributing to illegal dumping. I don't mean to be casting aspersions on anybody. I'm just saying that when the rules are tough to follow and illegal dumping is apparently so easy that they might resort to that. And so I would recommend that we give them an out, which is perhaps they can take their trash to the corporation yard, or we figure out some way that they can get some kind of a discount to take it out to the Davis Street dump or some other facility. And that's, if you want to throw those questions up there again, if you don't mind, I'll see if I left anything out. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for it to show up on my screen. I didn't see it up there. Oh, thank you, yeah. I think I agree generally with the locational and operational guidelines, although I would like also to find a way, as Councilmember Zamenio pointed out, having it be more cooperative in, finding some justification. By the way, the only reading that I get out of the bill says that if there's a farmer's market then, or some other business like that, then you can put some regulation defining who else gets to exist there. But I don't think that's going to happen easily, just FYI. All right, good. I think I covered it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the great report. I thought it was comprehensive. I appreciate the community outreach that was done and kind of the extensive community input. I also appreciate the comments from folks in the public today and some of the emails that we got. I think I'm really interested in ensuring that this ordinance strikes the right balance and not cannibalizing our brick and mortar businesses that, as we've heard today, are good citizens in our city and in our community. They are, providing, tax benefits. They're, following health and safety codes. So I won't kind of repeat all of that. But I also want to make sure that we have clear guidelines in place for this street vending that's inevitably happening across our city, but other cities, in the nation. So I appreciate us, looking at this and trying to find a way of ensuring that we're striking the right balance in terms of improving safety, ensuring that taxes are paid, that we have a clean community, that we're supporting entrepreneurship in a way that's safe and equitable, and entrepreneurship not just for these sidewalk, vendors, but also for our brick and mortar, businesses. We want to see them grow and we want to see them expand, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to support, to the best of the ability, both of those. I don't think they have to be competing. We just need to find the right balance with our ordinance. So going through some of the questions that we have today, looking at the locational guidelines, number 2, it says city-owned properties, including but not limited to parking structures and parking lots, which I agree with. It says unless otherwise authorized by the city. I would just want us to be really clear on how that authorization is achieved. And looking at, is there technical assistance for some of these vendors to, kind of receive this authorization? And then also, I think I heard from a few of my colleagues, and it sort of aligns with what I was thinking too, which is there a way of us pre-assigning areas, perhaps even on certain days within our city, that these vendors can go to? We can support it, we can market it, we can bring bathrooms there, we can do what we need to do to support it, and that can probably also, if we're strategic in assigning those locations, we might be able to do what Councilmember Zermenios was looking to do, which is ensuring that there's those buffers between brick and mortar and these sidewalk vendors. Is something that came to mind. Identifying a place, to come together and to sell, I think is important. There might be ways of looking at scholarships for farmers markets to bring these organizations or street vendors to farmers markets, since, that seems like a pretty good environment for street vending. I also agree on, we need to have a really clear definition on what sidewalk vending is. Because at first I was thinking, sort of food. And then I was like, well, but then it also could be, the ice cream man, which I guess is food too, but, it's a dessert. And then it's like, it could be the person selling flowers in the median, during a holiday. It could be the person selling gifts at a gas station, So I'm just trying to really kind of make sure that we're clear on who this ordinance applies to. As my colleague Cyrep had mentioned, does this apply to people's own driveways? And the reason that I ask that is because, right across the street from Moreau, there's, someone's residential house, and they have a driveway, and they sell chicken and tamales like every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm like, would that apply to them because it's their own, property? We heard a comment about not bringing out your kitchen, which I do appreciate, but then I also appreciate what Councilmember Goldstein had mentioned, which is, we might be prohibited from, putting that into the ordinance, saying that you can't prepare the food on site. But, just kind of looking to see how we address, not necessarily having these big street kitchens rolled out onto the sidewalk, but, enabling some sort of cells in a way that's safe. One of the I think it was the locational guidelines. It talked about, requiring a distance from the park, or, not being able to sidewalk vend in parks. Did I get that right? Okay. But then in this community survey, if I'm kind of correlating these two things, I think 46% of the community said they would like this to happen in parks. So I'm not sure that I agree that it shouldn't be in parks. So we, if 50% of the survey respondents are saying that's the most, beneficial location that they would, prefer these to be at, I would want to make sure that we're hearing what the survey results are saying. In the interviews, we heard that when I think there was 4 street vendors interviewed, they talked about the permit cost being a potential barrier. One of the questions I have is there a way of using ARPA funds or other, economic development funds to help either cover the cost of that permit one time, or to provide technical assistance to help them get through the permitting process. Because I do think that it's important that they're regulated, that they do have permits, that they are paying taxes, that they're doing the right thing. It's just doing the right thing may not always be as clear to some of us as to others. So providing that technical assistance, I think, is important. And then 13, it's still under the locational guidelines. It's around the stationary sidewalk vendor shall not vend within a park if the city has assigned an agreement for concessions that exclusively permits the seller of food. How would they know? How would they know that the city has issued some sort of exclusive permit for the sale of food or merchandise, you know, so they know not to go into that park to sell or go around that park?
Well, I'm thinking of a hypothetical, and the way they would know is they would come in and apply for a permit, and they would find out, you know, hey, this is in a park. Oh, we have a concessionaire's
Good.
agreement. Yeah.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense to me. I support that. You know, the sidewalk vending times, you know, 9 to 7, generally resonate with me. I can support that. But then I'm just thinking about, you know, those hot dog vendors when people are coming out of the bars, you know, in the evenings or at the late nights on the weekends. You know, would there be some sort of stipulation for downtown vendors to be potentially, you know, open later to support some of the patrons that are in our city doing other activities at that time? Around the trash receptacles, you know, I do think that it's important that, you know, these street vendors aren't leaving litter, you know, and blight across our city. How we go about ensuring that, I think, is a balance that we should kind of consider digging into more. You know, I'm like, do we provide them trash bags? I don't know, because we don't provide businesses trash bags, so I want to be equitable with what we're asking our brick and mortar businesses to go through. But I absolutely think that we have to make sure that trash is taken care of. You know, they just don't pack up their stuff and leave their trash there. But, you know, that came as part of their business and shouldn't go with them when they're done with their business for the day. The other thing I would like to see is, you know, how people would voice violations, you know, whether that be labor concerns from the employees that are working there, maybe location or operational violations, maybe even food issues, you know, around, you know, people getting sick from eating there. So just being very clear on kind of what that reporting process looks like. I'm happy to hear that code enforcement is, you know, is going to be involved. I also agree that when it comes to the operational guidelines, I'm not really in support of number 8, which is, you know, prohibiting carts, wagons, racks, you know, including freestanding signs, umbrella, ice chests, chairs and tables and benches. You know, I agree we shouldn't be setting up, you know, a full 30-person restaurant on the sidewalk, but I mean, an ice chest is, I think, starting to get a bit overbearing. So I do want to make sure that we're striking the right balance in what we're putting in here. And yep, and then I had the same question about, you know, who's enforcing this, but I heard from you guys on who's going to do that. I do like the approach about education before fines, because this is a pretty big change in our city. So I do appreciate, you know, just like with anything, hey, you know, this isn't the appropriate thing to do, and then progressive disciplinary action or enforcement action from there, I think, is good. The question that I had is, at what point, if ever, will these disciplinary actions mount to shutting them down?
What happens is with the the steps in enforcement is that there's the verbal, and that could probably happen once or twice, and then there's the written, and then it goes to the administrative enforcement procedures that are in our Muni Code. So once we get to that point, then the discussion of ceasing their operations comes into play.
Okay, got it. Maybe we can kind of make sure that that's clear in the ordinance too, because I didn't really find that to be too clear in there. So again, going through the operational guidelines, I don't have any issues with what's there. You know, the hours, I kind of talked about that. Maintaining a clean area, I agree with. How we go about that, I think, is the question that we still need to do some more research on and come up with some more proposals. prohibited items, I agree with. We shouldn't be selling, marijuana or adult items on the street. Some of the optional guidelines under the operational category, optional, no selling of services. I agree with that. This rental activity, displaying only goods that are available for immediate on-site sale. I think I support all of those as well. Those are the other thing is, going to what my last comment is going to what Councilmember Syrup had mentioned. I don't know if limiting sidewalk vendors in residential zones to roaming only is something I'm in support of. I've seen this work in some neighborhoods where it's not just limited to roaming, and it really revitalizes some of the interaction within the neighborhood. So I would just like to offer that. And then I also agree we shouldn't be vending in parking zones. And I believe I addressed all the questions for tonight's work session. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. There's a couple things I just wanted to sort of summarize, some based on the questions from the audience and some from myself, that the reason why we're not addressing sanitation and food handling, et cetera, is because that's a county issue. So we're not addressing that in this ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to sort of make that clear for some of the comments earlier, that's why we're not worrying about sort of the sour meat or something that might be on the vending, that might be on one of the vendors. Sorry, you can't hear me. Thank you. That the county is handling the food situation. Doesn't mean that everyone has their permit with the county, but that's the enforcement mechanism. And then the other thing with SB 946, it potentially is overbroad, but it does prohibit us from saying you can't set up in front of a business. And that's, so we are limited by state law for that reason.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And I also just felt like, it seems like there was a dynamic set of circumstances. The pandemic hit, people lost their jobs. The people that lost their jobs first were restaurant workers. It was sort of our lowest income people. And they, became innovative and found ways to support themselves. And I appreciate that. And then at the same time, SB 946 was enacted and started to, it was 2019 that I think it came into enforcement. And I think it created this dynamic environment that it sounds like has brought us out of balance. That wasn't there before. And so, I think that's what we're trying to do, is to bring us back into balance without villainizing, what street vendors are doing, because I think it is a part of a fabric of our community. And I think a lot of people have admitted they started that way, and we want to support that kind of entrepreneurship. And I'm all for that. And I appreciate education that might happen and what we're going to do here. And I think it sounds like most people want to come into compliance and, and get their permits, and, as long as we provide the proper education to be able to do that. And potentially, I think a lot of this ballooning of vendors happen, permission by lack of enforcement. So people thought, oh, great, you're doing it, I'll do it. I mean, it just started to balloon. And I think that's potentially a lack of staff to be able to enforce both on the county level and on the state level. So I appreciate what we're trying to do here to bring this back into balance and do what we can without villainizing a set of our community that's really important to Hayward, and still supporting our businesses that are doing everything they're supposed to be doing, getting their permits and paying their taxes. And I absolutely want to honor that. So just to look at some of it, one thing I want to say about the trash, there was a comment from the gentleman earlier. The trash I have in my neighborhood is from Jack in the Box and Taco Bell and Sonic. It's not from street vendors, so I don't feel like that's something we can absolutely put on street vendors. At the same time, I do think that trash receptacles for street vendors are absolutely necessary, and I would ask that optional, I think it's number 5, be one of the guidelines that we put in the ordinance, as well as the part about asking them to make sure that they're taking care of the food grease and any fluids so that they're not being poured into landscaping that's nearby. I mean, that seems to be that's definitely a quality of life issue for the neighborhood. Let's see. And I just want to make sure that we will have a program of education to go out, give everyone at least a chance to get up to speed.
Yes, that's correct. So after this ordinance becomes effective, we do have a plan, an implementation phase of this, where we'll be coordinating with Alameda County Department of Environmental Health and community-based organizations to educate sidewalk vendors about the permitting process and other things that they have questions about.
Thank you. And then, the comments about sort of creating spaces within the city to allow vendors to come and maybe congregate and offer, their products. This doesn't prohibit us from doing that. So we can always do that on top of that.
No, it does not. And actually, we've had conversations with HARD, and we've had conversations with the farmers market. So the farmers market, they're open to sidewalk vendors. Of course, they have to apply to be part of the farmers market. And with HARD, there are a couple of parks that have spaces available that may be a place where we could have sidewalk vendors congregate on a night, and like food trucks.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And I did want to ask the difference between a food truck and a food vendor.
So a street vendor is someone that vends from a cart or their person or a table, whereas a food truck, of course, is a vehicle that uses a public right-of-way or private property to vend food.
And that's a whole different
Yes.
set of, okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's it. I just wanted, and then the other thing about enforcement, can somebody right now use Access Hayward to request, enforcement of a food vendor that they feel like is not somehow operating properly?
They should be able to do that, yes.
Is that an option in Access Hayward?
I'm unsure.
And then also if, hopefully it is, if it's not, let's make sure it is, but maybe we should also link to the county so that if it's health code violation, that they're able to use our Access Hayward in order to contact the county.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm not sure how they're doing that. If they go home, look on the web, figure out how to get there. Okay, thank you. And to answer your questions, I'm good with the suggested policy language. I just want to add the optional language around trash receptacles and the disposing of liquids and grease and things like that they take that with them. Otherwise, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Roach, you beat Councilmember Syrup's time by 30 seconds. Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
No pressure. Thank you to staff for the presentation. I know a lot of hard work went into this, and thank you to the residents who came in and spoke on this issue, not just tonight, but for many nights. We definitely heard you. We appreciate your advocacy on this issue, and we hope to find some solution here that can help a lot of people, because I know this is a big deal. And then also, thank you to the residents who submitted responses on the survey. I felt like that was a lot of responses. Do you know if that was not necessarily a record, but would you consider that a successful survey based on the amount you received?
I do. Actually, sharing the number of responses with my colleagues, they were very surprised too.
Great. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the staff that worked on the survey, because it seemed to be easy to use for folks in order for them to submit responses. So hopefully you all are capturing those lessons learned for other surveys, because it was pretty successful. I would say in terms of comments, a lot of my colleagues mentioned a lot of things that I agree with tonight, so I want to make sure I don't repeat myself too much. But the biggest thing for me is making sure there is education and a pathway to supporting small businesses to get started. And I like the education element of this prior to enforcement, so I definitely want to keep that. Another thing that I like is really just making sure they know where to go, where the locations. I know I've talked plenty of times in the past about how HARD needs to be a partner with us. There's underutilized facilities that could support vendors like this. I also want to make sure we balance vendors that may operate out of their facilities or near their facilities, because the residents who live near those facilities may not necessarily sign up for all that vending every day in their neighborhoods. So we just want to make sure that we do some kind of outreach to that community before we go into those locations. Also reminding them that Farmers Market is here every Saturday. If they want to apply, that we can definitely support them in that effort. Also Chabot Flea Market. Thank you, Ms. Peggy. Just want to make sure that they also know that their street parties, we do have events, we have festivals, and they could work with the Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Development Alliance. There are a lot of resources out there to get support on how to start their business. So just want to make sure that that information is out there. Now, some of my concerns, my biggest concern is traffic. I definitely am concerned about what's happening on medians off of Jackson, Hesperian, and I understand people, there are a lot of people who go through those corridors, but I'm really nervous someone's going to get hurt. And so I would definitely want to highlight that is the main reason why one of the main reasons why we want to address this. This is a public safety issue. And then also, a gentleman mentioned a chicken truck off of Whipple. I believe that's Union City, but I do understand his concern, and my concern with some of the vendors is the fire safety and the locations of them, and some of them are directly underneath trees, and it's just an accident waiting to happen. So is there any way we can look at those locations and reach out to those vendors to let them know that this is a potential fire safety issue, and this is something that maybe fire can also help educate?
Yes, we could, and actually open flame is not allowed per Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. So there in itself is a violation of the Health and Safety Code. So however, Alameda County Department of Environmental Health is complaint driven. So if our residents see something, they need to contact ACDEH.
Okay, so ditto to Councilmember Roche's comments on Access Hayward. And then do they also need to carry a food safety manager certificate along with this mobile food permit?
I think that's part of the mobile food facility permit, that they have to also have a handler's permit as well.
Okay, all right. And then I have looked at other cities' facility info sheet, and one city of San Leandro, they have a really good checklist here of what they would like to see for mobile food facilities. And they have a definition of what a mobile food vendor is on that checklist. So I think that's really important. It does include food trucks, ice cream trucks, catering, barbecue trailers, and vending units. And it does not include delivery services in this. And then they have special requirements for ice cream vendors and making sure they have no one on the Sex Offender Registry Act. Is that something that we already have as something to look into, particularly with the food trucks?
We can definitely look into that as
Okay.
part of our requirement.
Okay. And then one other thing that I noticed in this checklist is that they do have it at least 300 feet away from restaurants, cafes, delis, and scheduled community events. Is that something that is allowed for just because San Leandro created it, or is this something that is like a disconnect here on requirements?
So in terms of like special events and farmers markets, so I believe SB 946 specifically states that we can have a distance from farmers markets and swap meets and special events. We can actually prescribe a distance. As far as the cafes, there may be an objective health, safety, and welfare concern, like again, egress, accessibility, et cetera.
Okay, okay. And then hand washing, they do have requirements here for hand washing and having a hand washing station. Is that something that we also are looking into for this ordinance? Because I don't remember.
That should be covered by the mobile food facility permit, but we can.
So how is, because I see a lot of street vending, but this is coming up as a concern from residents and business owners. So how do they have the permit and then have those hand washing stations and they're out? outdoors?
So because the mobile food facility permit, the health and safety requirements require the hand washing stations as part of getting an MFF. So it could be that the city of San Leandro is basically, they're basically restating the language from the statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is required. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, I agree with a lot of the regulations. My main concern is really the traffic safety. So if that is something that we can just highlight, the main reason why we're doing this, it's just I'm really concerned about that. But I hope that the education piece is enforced. I'm just nervous that it's going to escalate quicker, and then people are not going to get the education in order to go through that pathway. So is there something that we can look into to make sure people understand what's happening in terms of languages? And no, I'm just nervous that I'm nervous about execution of it, I guess, is my biggest concern with different backgrounds.
We can definitely look into that. As part of the implementation, yes, we will have materials in different languages, and also have other languages available when we have workshops that we're considering with ACDEH and community-based organizations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You didn't beat Councilmember Roach. Okay, thank you. Well, I think, you know, again, I want to thank everybody for coming. And, you know, this is an issue that was brought to us last year. And, you know, I just wanted to tell, you know, especially Mr. Flores, you know, bureaucracy takes time, ordinances take time, and we will get there. Trust me. And I know you've been at every meeting, and you've voiced at every meeting. So thank you. And you know, and I know there's you speak for a lot of taqueros out there and a lot of restaurant owners out there. So thank you very much for your work on this. You know, I just not to reiterate. I think Councilmember Bonilla, you know, articulated it quite well when he talked about finding a balance. You know, we're not anti, you know, street vendors. I don't think anyone has ever come up here and said we're against the street. No, that's never happened. And we're not totally against. You know, we're not totally anti brick and mortar. I mean, you know, we know. If anything, I'll tell you, if you know, just from somebody who's been you know, participating in this discussion. We absolutely see the value in brick and mortar. And I think I've picked up a lot of, just on your lived experiences, you know, I've learned a lot about what it takes to maintain and keep a brick and mortar open and going. I mean, and I think that's, you know, it's hard work. I have friends that own restaurants, and I know it's hard work. And you guys are always there. And if you weren't here tonight, you'd probably be there. So I appreciate that. And so I just wanted to really be clear about that, right? We are trying to find a balance, and I think you articulated it quite well. So, and I think the other thing I think we ought to sort of really be mindful of is, you know, and I don't want to sound like I'm completely, you know, anti the state and, you know, villainizing the state, but, you know, we are trying to do something that the state has completely, you know, tied our hands on. I mean, you know, and we're really trying to, you know, curate something so carefully. You know, and I have to agree with Councilmember Zermeño. I mean, the fact that we can't regulate the proximity to another business. I mean, it's just. It's absolutely, you know, it's absolutely incredible. And so, anyways, you know, I don't want to sound grumpy, but that's what we're trying to do here. And I think, you know, I just wanted to share that. Anyway, some highlighted things I just wanted to. It might sound like I'm repeating, but there are things I really want to stress. You know, one, I think Councilmember Goldstein talked about insurance. You know, I don't think insurance requiring insurance, liability insurance. I mean, there's nonprofits, who participate in summer seamless breakfast and lunch programs. They need to have liability insurance at least up to $1 million, And so I don't think, requiring insurance is too restrictive. And I know Councilmember Syrup talked about, sort of overly restricting, and I get it. But I don't think insurance is too much. There was another thing I saw a little bit on here, was sign requirements. And, and this might sound a little restrictive, but I think we've all seen when sign requirements, or when signing goes awry, right? And I'll just give you one small example. There's the guy there's a vendor who cooks chicken right across the street from Chabot College. One day, and it's at a park, it's at a landscaped park, and they're right across the street from the gas station. One day I drive by, and I see the grill there, it's fine, he's cooking. And the next day I see one of those big flags that's, sticking out of the ground, waving with, And the next day I see, a dancing chicken, off and on the sidewalk. I mean, and so, we need to sort of, rein that in, and that's why, we impose sign requirements on brick and mortar, and I don't think it's too much to require a sidewalk vendor to have an A-frame sign, a modest sign, nothing, but dancing, fruit and poultry with big old 10-foot banners. That's just. And I think that's what really frustrates neighbors, and so there's that. So I want to see a sign requirement that that is uniform, that looks good and professionally done, and the other thing here I also put here regarding some of the requirements. I know Mayor Pro Tem Andrews talked about those a little bit, but on the sign, requiring that they put, not only the name of their business, but have information around phone number, like how do you get a hold of them? What happens if they get sick? If someone does get sick, who can they call? I think I forget who brought it up about voicing. Was it voicing? Labor, location, operation. So voicing dissatisfaction with either the food or dissatisfaction with what's going on. Who can they call, right? And so having that on the sign, very clearly, I don't think that's too much to ask. The trash issue, the trash, when I heard about when I heard this idea about, not requiring a trash receptacle, I heard the cries of the Keep Hayward Cleaning Green task force, but, I don't think a trash can, or, a solid bin and a recycle bin, I don't think that is too much to require, especially when they are serving a soda and stuff. It should be, it should be organized and tidy and and so forth. This idea about zones. In LA, I do know that they have done zones. I mean, there's particular blocks and particular streets, and something that, and maybe this is something that we consider as we sort of work through this, but we have all these greenways, the greenway, the Eden greenways that snake through the city. I mean, I don't think it would be too, out of this world to maybe designate a particular greenway. I mean, we own them. I mean, I know we're in partnership with HARD, but maybe we sort of slice out a space on the greenway where we can where we can sort of corral everyone and do that, and that becomes the destination, right? And I don't see that being too big of an issue. One thing I just want us to be mindful of, and I say this all of us here, and even with some of the callers, because I think one of the caller, I think she was speaking with a balanced voice, and I can hear the empathy for the street vendor, but I just wanted to be mindful and remind us to be mindful about, we're also trying to protect neighborhood aesthetic, right? And we don't want, people move into a neighborhood, and we don't want, these unwieldy, these street vendors start, like this guy over by Chabot College, right? I don't think anyone would like that in their neighborhood down the street or on their block or in front of their house or something. So just as we're working on this, just be mindful of the neighborhood aesthetic. And, we did see people support this. I mean, the data clearly shows that people support this. And I should also mention, I had to look at it again, but we interviewed some street vendors, right? And the street vendors were like, well, they didn't know about the state regs, and they didn't know about what was going on. But they said if it happens, if there are a new ordinance, just teach us how to do it, and we'll do it. I mean, so it's not like. What it's nice is, like, we don't have like street vendors over here and then brick and mortar over there, and so I think there is a case to be made where where they want to get legal, they want to get permitted, and they want to be able to to do this successfully. And then let's see. Lastly, and this will be my last comment, the proximity issue to other, I'm aware of what the law is, state law is, but however, for the furthest distance that we can get, I don't know what that is. I mean, I know we have 100 feet or 200 feet here, but I mean, I know San Leandro has 300 feet, but I mean, if San Leandro is pushing that line, well, let's push that line. And because I have to agree with the restaurant owners. I absolutely think it's not right, unfair, inequitable that you have a street vendor who is literally, sitting in front of a brick and mortar selling the same thing, and it just doesn't. The state legislators who put this law in place, I don't. Sometimes I don't understand what they do up there in Sacramento, but I just think that's however the furthest we can put the distance, that's what I'd like to get. Okay. Other than that, I wanted to say thank you. Do you have what you need from us?
I think so.
You think so? It's because for a work session, this was a 2-hour work session. So okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and congratulations on your first time up here on the dais. Congratulations. And I'll tell you, we could not be more. Happy and proud that it's the both of you working on this. So thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to close this item. And we have our finance director walking up with the 713-page budget book. But before she proceeds, I'd like for us to take a 7-minute break so that we can take a break. Okay, 7 minutes.
might get on a commission again. Uh-oh. Good night, guys. Thank you very much. Oh, hey, when we're 46 police officers.
Okay. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. And the next item is item number 20, and it's the budget CIP public hearing and adoption. Hold public hearing and adopt resolution for adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2024 operating budgets of the City of Hayward, the Hayward Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Hayward Housing Authority. Fiscal year 2024 capital improvement program budget, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 operation budget and appropriations for fiscal year 2024, adoption of the 2024 capital improvement program budget and appropriations for the fiscal year 2024, adoption of the Hayward Redevelopment Successor Agency budget, and adoption of the Hayward Housing Authority budget. Now, I'm sure the Director of Finance did that to me on purpose, but I believe the Director of Finance, Director Gonzalez, is going to kick this off.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, I will be hopefully incredibly brief. This is towards the end of our kind of budget process. Tonight, we're here to hold a public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 proposed operating and CIP budgets with the hope to also adopt after the close of the public hearing. This is just kind of a snapshot of where we've been. It gives a highlight to both, again, a reminder to the council, but also to the community about the city's budget process. So we kick off our annual budget process in January and spend January and February kind of reviewing budgets, having departments review budget needs based on changes in state mandates, things like that, as well as programmatic needs. And then in April and in March and April, we meet with the city manager to review those requests and proposals for her consideration. Once a determination is made on what is going to be supported, it is then included in the proposed budget document, which is provided to the City Council, also published on the city's website at the end of April. We did hold our Saturday work session in May. It was on May 13th this year. There was a second budget hearing, which did not warrant any additional follow-up or additional presentations from departments, but that was held on May 16th. That same evening was the first work session for the CIP presentation and work session, which was presented by Director Miri. And then we are here tonight on June 6th for a public hearing with the hope to adopt after the close of the public hearing. Should we not be in a position to adopt the budget this evening, we will return to council on, this should be June 20th, not June 13th, June 20th for seeking adoption of the proposed operating budget. So this table here is a snapshot summary of budget expenditures proposed for fiscal year 2024. City of Hayward budget funds are just at $397.2 million. Agency funds, which include the Hayward Successor Redevelopment Agency Operating Fund, Housing Authority Fund, and the Hayward Shoreline JPA, accounts for about $4.6 million. So a total city operating budget of $401.8 million. And then we have a total proposed CIP budget of $115.6 million. So this table here provides a comparison across a couple of different areas. So we have the fiscal year 23 adopted budget. Then we have the fiscal year 24 proposed budget that was presented to you on April 28th, which was also the guide for the conversation for the budget work session on Saturday, May 13th. That green color shaded column in the center is the proposed budget that incorporates some changes that occurred between when it was presented on April 28th and today. And so that change is actually an increase to the general fund of $409,000 and a slight decrease in the all other funds category of a reduction of $532,000. So a net change actually overall for all city funds is a net decrease of $123,000. So in the next slide, I'll go ahead and provide some additional detail on what those changes were, but wanted to highlight here from a dollar and cent standpoint what the difference between the April 28th proposed budget and what is being presented to you this evening. So again, to kind of highlight the changes that occurred between when it was presented on the 28th and when it was discussed on May 13th at the Saturday work session, there were two changes, particularly in the general fund. One was to account for the cost of living adjustment for the mayor and city council. There is a COLA to be effective on July 1st of 5%, and that was an increase of $6,805. The second change since the Saturday work session was an increase of $402,000. That was related to additional strategic roadmap projects that were supported and approved by the council. That included the ticketing system for tracking council and constituent requests, consultant services to administer 360 evaluations and executive coaching, and then replacement of the Monument Gateway sign on Jackson and Silva, and then contract services to expand the city's litter collection services. For the all other funds, there were two. We did fully fund a debt service payment for the 2013 water revenue refunding bond. So that was originally included in the fiscal year 2024 budget. That payment was made this fiscal year, and so there was a decrease of $549,000. And then there was a slight correction in the special revenues funds to reflect appropriate transfer amounts to the workers' compensation fund. So there was a small net increase of $18,000. So I wanted to take a moment. You at this point have seen the 5-year forecast probably several different times since the beginning of this year. This does incorporate the changes being proposed this evening. So in the original budget proposed and presented on April 28th, we were showing a use of $4.7 million. If the changes presented this evening are incorporated, we actually are looking at a projected use of general fund reserves of about $5.1 million. So there is a slight impact across the 5-year forecast where we continue to see that revenues outpace expenditures. As we stated during the Saturday work session, the city has worked continuously each year to ensure that we minimize the impact to the use of general fund reserves. And we do implement different strategies. We are very conservative in our revenues, and so we often will see our revenues projections come in a little higher than we are projecting. We do bring those projections back to you at mid-year, and we do make changes as we do have the most current information available. This just kind of gives a summary in a pie chart form of the general fund revenue by sources. As you can see here from this chart, property tax, sales tax, and utility user taxes are really our largest buckets, and even the real property transfer tax is a significant portion of the city's general fund revenues, So again, this is just kind of a depiction of what our revenue sources look like. This is a general fund expenditure by category, similar to the revenue by source. This gives us a breakdown of really what our expenses are attributed to. As you can see, the largest portion of the general fund expenditure is salaries and benefits. That makes up about 78% of the total proposed general fund budget. I'm going to quickly cover CIP. I do know that Director Amiri is on the call, so if we have questions, he can answer those. But this is just, again, a breakdown similar to the general fund. This is the 2024 CIP expenditures by category. So these are the various categories. Again, the larger pieces of pie are really related to infrastructure, related to sewer systems, water systems, the city's pavement rehabilitation projects, as well as livable neighborhoods, which makes up about 16%, sewer systems about 24%, water systems 19%, and then the rehabilitation of pavement 14%. The fiscal year 24 CIP expenditure by fund, the total proposed CIP for fiscal year 24 is $115 million. Again, the larger pieces of the pie as far as the breakdown of the budget proposal is the sewer systems at $29.3 million, water systems at $20.4 million, and then you can see we have some special revenue such as Measure B and gas tax, which make up about $9 million each in the requested proposed CIP for fiscal year 2024, as well as general capital projects. So those are projects that are more related to general type of capital improvements, and that's at $13.4 million. So the recommendation this evening is to, 1, conduct a public hearing in accordance with the city's charter, and 2, that the city council adopt resolutions approving the fiscal year 2024 operating and CIP budgets in accordance with the city's charter. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, and then I think the next would be to hold a public hearing, and then again, council discussion and a motion.
Okay, thank you. Let me, our first question is from Councilmember Goldstein.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was my hand still raised? I didn't mean to do that.
Yep. Actually, is this, it's not, oh, this might be an old, okay. Let me, hold on a second. Hold on. Okay, Councilmember Andrews. And then if you have, just I'll keep my eye on that.
Thank you for the report and all the work that went into this, as well as the strategic roadmap that feeds into this. One question that came up actually during our last meeting, we did receive a letter from Hayward Tri-City Delta alumni chapter, Delta Sigma Theta, about events, and they mentioned Juneteenth, and just wanted to know, is this something, has the city looked at paying for events in that amounts, in the amount that they specified for previous projects or events, and is this something that you've seen other cities do?
Thank you, Councilmember Andrews. So we are meeting with that group on Friday afternoon to discuss the request further. I would just, to put into context, I think their request was $100,000 simply for the Juneteenth event. The entire events budget that is allocated by the Community Services Commission is only $138,000. I would say most communities, pay some portion of events or provide in-kind services through staff time, some level of funding, but usually do not subsidize entire events. And so I'm happy, looking forward to that conversation, and we'll provide more information and follow up to the council afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you. Just a quick note to Nicole. You've done an excellent job, you and your team. It has been painless, no heartburn at all whatsoever. It's been very clear and transparent, and I thank you.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. Echoing Councilmember Germanio's comments, I think your group and organization of the Finance Department did a great job administering this process. This was my first time looking at the budget from the seat of a council member. You know, I've seen the budget and the CIP as a planning commissioner, but I think it holds a little bit more weight when you're looking at it through this lens. But I do appreciate the comprehensive budget process as well as the strategic planning that went behind it. And I would say the tight coupling of the city's strategic roadmap with the budget. I actually like the way it was presented today, where kind of the roadmap goes first, since that's sort of our strategic vision and then the budget supports that. I also appreciate the transparency and the extensive community outreach that went into this budget proposal. I do think that the city is in a very, strong economic and financial position, at least, in terms of our stewardship too. I think we're great stewards of these funds. I said this a few times, but I'll just say it again. I really don't like the use of reserves, especially for our operating cost. I know that our revenue is outpacing expenditures, and the reason that I'm okay with that and I'm able to stomach it is because I know we're going to be doing a mid-year budget review, and I also appreciate your comment about our revenue projections are pretty modest. So hopefully at mid-year, we'll see how modest they were, and we'll realize that we're not having to dip into our reserves perhaps as much as we're forecasting. And if we are still projected to dip into our reserves, that would be the opportunity for us to reforecast and replan as needed if we were uncomfortable with doing that as a council. Anything we can do to minimize the use of our reserves, I think is the right thing to do. And I appreciate our eye that our finance director has to, limit the use of our reserves. So, anything you can do to kind of just hold those, ironclad, put them in the safe and don't give people the code, I would appreciate. But those are my comments, and I'll be fully supporting this recommendation that was brought forth tonight. And thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions appear, I'll turn to public comment. Is there anybody online that would like to make a public comment? I don't see anybody. Is there anybody in the audience in the chamber that would like to make a public comment? Madam City Clerk, is there anyone in the chamber that would like to make a public comment?
No one, Mr. Mayor.
No? Okay. I have to close public comment first. So I'm going to now close public comment, and I believe Councilmember Ray Bonilla Jr. Has another.
Just one quick question. Is someone going to respond to Hey Coco, Miss City Manager? I know not Hey Coco, the Hayward Community Coalition. I know it is Hey Coco. I always get them confused with the concerned citizens, because like Coco and anyways. Are we going to respond to their letter? I know that we're responding to another letter that we received.
I'm happy to work with staff to prepare a response. I think, in various iterations, we've kind of responded to some of those questions. For example, on the people's budget, I think staff thought and continues to think it's a great project, but in terms of staff capacity, probably doing that every 2 or 3 years, just given how much time it took. And then we're still, even now, projects are still not even complete yet or even started, and so I think trying to figure out what the cadence and timing of that is. So yeah, we can prepare some responses.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Seeing that there's no other questions, do we have Councilmember Syrup?
Thank you, Mayor. I was trying to respect the process. Just wanted to echo my colleagues' comments to you, Director Gonzalez. This is your first budget that you prepared as director, is that correct?
As a director, yes.
Excellent. Well, congratulations and thank you for shepherding us through this process. Similar to what Councilmember Bonilla was saying, it's interesting being in this position because a lot of my engagement with the city began with me yelling at the council about the budget with Hey Coco. So I also appreciate you bringing up Hey Coco's concerns as well. I hope that the council and our staff appreciate the more civil letter that was put forward this time. Our hope is to have a good conversation about.
That was civil?
I think so.
Okay. Oh, okay.
We could have had 2 hours of public comment tonight. So I would say this was a win for everybody. I am looking forward to. I want to encourage staff to engage in that conversation because I think just keeping that dialogue going, like some of our public commenters from other earlier items had mentioned, I think is what's going to help us work together and move forward together as opposed to being in opposition with each other. So I just want to encourage us to keep that dialogue alive. I'm happy to move the item if that's appropriate.
Moved by Councilmember Syrup, and I heard two simultaneous. Before I acknowledge a second, I'll go to Councilmember Roach had a question before.
I didn't. I just want to make a comment, and
Okay,
I
then
wasn't
go ahead and make a
seconding,
comment,
so
yeah.
whoever else said second can grab it. I also wanted to thank Dr. Gonzalez and your team for the work that you put into the budget. I'm glad we were your first, since it was a learning process for me. It was really informative. I think I'll probably be more effective at this next year because of everything you brought to us this year and the process in which this took. I mean, it was a lot, and it was really. It was just so important for us to go through it step by step to really understand what we're doing here for the city and trying to be good fiscal agents for the city. So thank you very much. And I didn't have any comments today because I feel like I spent all my comments in our previous sessions. I feel like we had a great opportunity to do that. And I just want to thank you and congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
So with my compliments, I second the motion.
Moved by Councilmember Syrup, seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And I just wanted to echo all of the complimentary words. Director Gonzalez was a student of mine at Cal State East Bay. And I just wanted to say she learned nothing in my class about delivering a $401 million budget to the city of Hayward. Which might have been a good thing. But congratulations, and clearly, what I liked about this was, there's we have new council members up here, and I think the fact that this was done in such a cooperative and collaborative way, I think it really is testament to the process and just the. Just what we did to get here. Not to say that your predecessor wasn't as cooperative and collaborative, but I think these are very complex documents. They take a long time to put together. You start working on this, last year, and to get here, these are pretty significant votes. There's very few votes we take that carry so much weight. This is a vote. Before we went to iPads, we used to have these, the big binder, we used to have those big old binders, and we'd put it, right here and say, this is what we're passing right here. But now we have iPads and they're all digital. But no, it's always good. These are great votes, and the fact that we can always do this unanimously. I think we're going to be unanimous tonight. Do them unanimously and in a good mood. And I think it does show that we're all together on this, and we're putting our best financial foot forward. So, with that said, Madam City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
See.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, yes, and the item passes unanimously.
Mayor Salinas?
I'm waiting for the balloon drop. Where's the balloon drop?
Mayor Salinas, may I have a moment? I appreciate all of the acknowledgement, but I would be really remiss if I didn't acknowledge my team, especially Nicholas Mullins, who is a management analyst in finance. We were a very, very small team this year. It was essentially he and I for a huge portion of the budget process. And this budget document and the presentations and everything that's been presented has been an absolute team effort. And so I want to acknowledge his hard work and dedication over the last several months. It's been very intense. So again, I thank you for your acknowledgement, but I also want to thank my staff and acknowledge my staff for their efforts as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And when you meet with them tomorrow morning, but when you text them tonight,
Yes.
tell them the council certainly appreciates his work too. So
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, thank you. So our next item is item number 21, which is the GAN limit adoption. Adopt a resolution establishing a GAN appropriations limit for fiscal year 2024. And we're going to have Director Gonzalez kick this off. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to forego staff presentation on this item and go straight to council questions. Does anybody have any questions regarding item number 21? Seeing none, I'd like to close council questions, open up for public comment, close public comment. Seeing none, close public comment. And Madam City Clerk, can you take the, oh, can I get a motion? Moved by Councilmember Goldstein.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Roche. Madam City Clerk, can you take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Mayor, can I just ask that the director just explain what GAN is, just for the public who is watching? Just a 20-second.
Sure. So the GAN limit, appropriation limit, is a requirement that council adopt a new limit each fiscal year. It is a requirement. It essentially sets a limit on your tax proceeds in which you can appropriate. So the city's calculation for this year, which takes into consideration inflation as well as population growth, we have a GAN limit of $402 million. When you look at the city's tax proceeds projected for fiscal year 2024, we're at $147 million. So we are unfortunately not very close to that limit, but fortunately we are, not at that limit, like I said. But we are not close. We are only estimated to collect in tax proceeds about $147 million, and our limit is $402.
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you.
We're not voting yet, no. Madam City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Roach.
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Salinas.
Yes, passes unanimously. Next, we go to legislative business, item number 22. This is the REACH Code amendments, introduction of the revision of the electrification REACH Code ordinance with minor modifications required by California Building Standards Commission, and the report will come from Public Works Director Amiri and the Development Services Director Sarah Bowser. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to forgo staff report, move straight to council questions. Are there any council questions on this? Seeing none, I do, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you. Obviously newer to this role, I'm trying to understand a REACH Code ordinance versus a regular ordinance. It says this REACH Code ordinance was to be effective at the beginning of this year. So I'm just trying to understand how they relate to each other.
Mr. Pearson, you want to take that?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Syrup. So a REACH Code is basically, it's a term used for a local ordinance that amends the state building code. And the state building code is adopted on a 3-year cycle. And so the current building code became effective January 1st this year. And so our local ordinance was adopted in time to coincide with the January 1st start of the current state code.
Thank you. And so the bullet points that are part of the summary, those will go into effect with this new state building code. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, basically the ordinance is already in effect. What we're doing is amending the ordinance to satisfy the California Building Standards Commission. They simply requested that we incorporate the section numbers of the Cal Green, which is the state code, the name for the state code. We just had to incorporate those section numbers to satisfy the state, and they just wanted to see a executed, signed copy of the revised ordinance.
Okay, great. Thank you. These bullet points seem very bold in advancing our sustainability goals, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for the Council Sustainability Committee for putting this forward. Thank you, staff.
Okay, and if so, I'd like to close questions from council, open up for public comment. Seeing no public comment and seeing no one online, I'd like to close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Councilmember Cermeño. Seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And if there are no questions, Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it unanimously passes. Thank you. Next item I have is council reports and announcements. Are there any reports and announcements? Councilmember Andrews.
Since we're not meeting next Tuesday, just want to remind everyone Juneteenth is happening. Everyone's excited, right? June 15th from 5:30 to 8:30. We are doing a street party in partnership with the Chamber and a host of other folks. And then there is a Russell City Blues Festival June 17th at City Hall from 11 to 5. So you have 2 opportunities to celebrate Juneteenth.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Syrup.
I know the agenda item passed, but I also wanted to thank our city manager for the work on the budget too. I know a big part of that is the city manager's deliberation process, and I think this budget was really reflective of a lot of the community needs that I heard on the campaign trail. So I just appreciate our budget reflecting what it is that we think our community needs. And just a small aside is I had a few requests around the budget informationally that I'll follow up with you on. But thank you.
Thank you. Before we leave, before I adjourn, I wanted to announce that and report that last week, on Thursday, I went to Columbus, Ohio. Never been to Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio is a beautiful town. But I went to the U.S. Mayor's Conference, and it was the first time I have been to the conference, and it was pretty incredible, I have to say. There was probably 1,000 mayors from all across the country, from little towns with as much as 600 people to medium-sized towns of like 15,000 people, and then large cities, 100,000 and more. And it was kind of nice. I had a blue lanyard, which was a large city. So I got the flex, I got the flex, and I got the flex with the mayor of Tampa, the mayor of Chicago, and with some of these big city mayors. So it was nice. But there were a few things that of course I went to a lot of sessions, but some of the sessions that I wanted to highlight that I went to, and just sort of make a couple of comments about them. Of course, I went to the first time mayors session. And that was really neat. It was cool because some of the big national mayors that we see on the news and see on CNN a lot, they were in the room talking about their experiences, being a mayor and first-time mayor and all that. And it was interesting because, as they were talking, I was like, yeah, me too, right? So it was kind of cool. That was a neat workshop. But I went to a session on responding to the influx of migrants to cities. Children, health, and human services, advocating climate and equity plans, and community development and housing, jobs, education, and the workforce. I went to a session where one of our current colleagues, Mayor Izzy Ashcroft from Alameda, and her police chief partnered with retired Chief Charles Ramsey, who was the police chief in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, on the day of 9/11. Charles Ramsey he's considered like the dean of police chiefs. He's the chief of all American chiefs. He's just a wonderful man. This was my second time meeting him. And it's just, Mayor Ashcroft was, she was presenting with Chief Ramsey, Chief Art Acevedo, who was from Houston and is now in Aurora, Colorado, but again, a national figure in law enforcement. So it was nice to see one of my colleague mayors presenting next to such an illustrious group of mayors. It was and very well noted mayors. And then, of course, one of the interesting sessions I went to, it was transforming vacant commercial buildings to residential. And well, before I get to that one, I just wanted just to highlight a couple things. You know, I went to the responding to the influx of migrants to cities. It was really nice to see. It was really nice to see a lot of mayors along the U.S.-Mexico border who are really taking this issue incredibly serious. And you know, despite all of the horrible xenophobism by these big national known names across the country that are now running for president and all this, it really, to hear these mayors along the U.S.-Mexico border really speak with a very clear, united voice around their response to migrants, particularly children along the U.S.-Mexican border, was absolutely phenomenal. And it restored my faith in humanity that, while we have this layer of rhetoric, of political discourse at the national level, at the local level is really where we solve problems. And that was a theme more than there was a high frequency, where the mantra of the week was at the local level, mayors get it done. And I think the underlining message was it's councils, it's mayors and councils that our job is to solve problems, and we do it nonpartisanly, and we do it quite well. So that was good. And then a lot of the policies that were discussed and were presented, I'm glad to report that we're right there in the pocket with some of these other cities. The Mayor Cantrell from New Orleans, she was talking about her experiences, developing and implementing a climate action plan in New Orleans, and I was absolutely stunned. I mean, it was incredible to hear mayors in the room who admitted that they did not have a climate action plan. And they said that they could never get a climate action plan passed. I mean, you had mayors in there saying, there is no way I can get a climate action plan passed in my city. Can you imagine that? And so but to hear, the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, and the mayor of St. Louis was absolutely incredible. But I just wanted to, the session that was for me was converting vacant commercial properties to residential. And I couldn't not think about Councilmember Andrews during this 2-hour session. But I'll tell you where I really thought about Councilmember Andrews, and it had nothing to do with public art, and it had nothing to do with I forget the other one, but anyways, it had nothing to do with public art. It had nothing to do with trash or public art. What it had to do with was reimagining buildings to create housing. Now, I'll end on this. The representative, the president of the American Institute of Architecture, was one of the panelists. And she said that they had just finished, her firm that she worked with, she's in Boston, she said that her firm just finished converting, you ready for this? Converting a professional sporting stadium into housing, and the field in the middle was open public space. And I was thinking, as I was sitting there, and I was thinking, one, Angela Andrews, Councilmember Andrews, but the second thing I was thinking about was, maybe there's hope for the Oakland Coliseum. Maybe we can, we can turn, if we can't get, a team to come into the Coliseum for for good. But anyways, I just want to say, and I'll end on this, actually. Let me end on this. There were a couple of resolutions made by the conference. One resolution was a resolution that made really the focus of this year's 2023-24 Mayor's Conference agenda. The top agenda item was mental health. Mental health at every level, mental health across the entire, whether it was across the city organizationally, or whether it was across the city through every neighborhood, making sure that we're shored up on resources and services and programs, focusing on children, focusing on seniors. I mean, everything that we've been talking about is, I felt real comfortable that we are right in this pocket where in the mental health space. So a lot of stuff that we're doing with our police department and our fire department and with the hospital, I mean, we're right there. Another resolution is this, and the title, the title of the press release is this. It says, Mayor's Vow, All-Out Campaign to Preserve Our Democracy by Bringing Visibility to Racist and Punitive Legislation Directed at Our Cities. And one of the biggest issues that we were talking about, that the conference talked about, is federal and state legislation that was specifically geared at taking the rights or taking away what cities can do locally to solve problems. And the reason why this is such a big deal is because you had cities. I mean, I was blown away where you had cities that were totally usurped by county governments and state legislatures on what they can do. And if they were trying to solve, pass an ordinance again, to outlaw a hate crime, the state legislature can basically say, no, you can't do that, right? And take the city's ability to create ordinances to defend and to protect the health and safety of their citizens, of the people in the neighborhoods. It was absolutely, I mean, the fact that this is a major, agenda for mayors in 23-24, it was probably one of the most powerful moments of the conference, because the testimony you heard from mayors talk about how their authority had been usurped. It was absolutely amazing. But anyways, it was a great experience. I wanted to thank everybody for getting me over there, and I'm looking forward to next year. So with that, let me see. There is no council referral. Our next meeting is June 20th, 2023, and this meeting is adjourned.
Recording stop.